Under a gloomy sky that hid the sun, a long line of people was heading toward the demonic martial alliance, also known as the Demon Hall. The crowd was immense, moving tirelessly like a sea of ants toward their destination. They were all here for the same reason, the rumor that, regardless of origin, anyone with talent would be taught demonic arts. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, one that no aspiring person in their right mind would dare to miss. Even the veterans regretted not being younger so they could participate and prove their worth. But amid the crowd, a man's attention was drawn to a young man who asked a strange question. Has there been any murder around here? The question caused confusion. The Great Ten Demons tournament had not yet begun, so there was no reason for any deaths. But the young man, Buyunseal, remained still, his face shadowed and his gaze lost on the ground. This little mortician looked up, and his eyes shone with a crimson red, promising that everything was about to begin. His story began in a snowy field, where his grandfather found him and gave him his precious name, Buyunseal. Buyunseal had followed his grandfather, a mortician, to learn the craft since he was a child. Sitting beside him, he watched attentively as his grandfather tended to the dead with incredible skill. One day, while examining a body, he told his grandfather that the deceased seemed to be a master of the swift sword. He explained his deduction. Despite the slender body, the calf muscles were unusually well developed, a hallmark of the cutting celestial sword style. Impressed, his grandfather stroked his head, praising his incredibly sharp observational skills. With a proud smile, he declared that his grandson was truly a mortician sent from heaven. For Yunseal, no matter how hard life was, it didn't matter because he always had his grandfather by his side, until that fateful day arrived. Under the moonlight, in a dilapidated room, his grandfather rose from the bed, preparing for something. Outside, a dense bamboo forest stood motionless under the night sky. Suddenly, a strong wind blew through the trees, making them sway violently like an omen. The grandfather looked out the window, his face filled with deep and worried contemplation. He closed his eyes, recalling an old proverb, "The good do not come, and those who come are not good." Gently, he woke his grandson, asking him to get up for a moment. He proposed to a confused Yunseal to play the dead man's game, a strange request for such a late hour. To convince the sleepy Yunseal, he promised him the ceremonial robe and the sword he had longed for. The boy's eyes lit up with joy at the promise of such a reward. With a happy smile, Buyunseal quickly slipped into a large wooden wardrobe to start the game. From outside, her grandfather kindly reminded her of the most important rule. This time, you must endure until the sun rises. Surprised by the duration, Yunseal barely managed to acknowledge the strange request before her grandfather closed the wardrobe door. Her grandfather's hand gripped the hilt of his sword so tightly that his veins stood out as he cautiously stepped out of the house. The grandfather's eyes were filled with deadly caution, scanning the darkness in search of the threat he sensed approaching. And then a figure appeared, cloaked in robes and a large hat, mocking him. Is that not so? Beneath the moonlight, the visitor revealed the grandfather's forgotten identity, Bu Jianyong, the demon of the seven swords. With a furrowed brow, Jianyong admitted it had been a long time since anyone had called him by that name. The assassin expressed surprise that the man who once refused the post of vice leader of the Demon Hall was now willing to spend his days in the shadows, working in a humble profession like that of an undertaker. The two swords clashed in the night, creating an explosion of blinding light and an overwhelming murderous intent. But Jianyong revealed the truth. He became a mortician not to make a living, but as a path to atone for his sins. The killer was stunned for a moment, his face twisted with rage and a frenzied fury. Worried about the safety of the nearby innocents, Jianyong offered his life to the killer but asked that they take their fight elsewhere. The killer let out a chilling laugh but accepted his opponent's condition. "Fine," he said, "but don't think you can escape." Meanwhile, inside the house, the large wooden wardrobe began to shake violently. With a loud crash, Buyunseal pushed the door open and fell to the ground, breathing with difficulty. She trembled with cold, crying and complaining that she couldn't endure it any longer, even with the promise of the robe and the sword. When she calmed down, she realized her grandfather was not there and began to look for him. She wondered naively if her grandfather had been called to work, as often happened. In childish frustration, she opened the door to her house, complaining that people never showed respect to morticians. But what she saw outside left her completely paralyzed. Her pupils contracted in shock. The scene outside was of unnatural desolation, as if an incredible force had ravaged it. Guided by a terrible premonition, Bu Yunseal arrived at the bamboo forest only to find a scene of complete and utter devastation. He ran as fast as he could toward the bamboo forest, but his steps slowed until he stopped completely. His eyes widened in horror, and tears began to well up as he took in the scene before him. His grandfather lay against a tree, his body broken, his hair disheveled, and blood streaming from his closed eyes. With a heart-wrenching scream, Yunseal collapsed beside his grandfather, seeing that both of the old man's arms had been shattered. Barely conscious, Janyang whispered, asking if the boy before him was truly his beloved grandson, Seola. Through panicked sobs, the boy confirmed it was him, desperately asking what had happened. With his last strength, his grandfather could only whisper one word, "I'm sorry." Then, with terrifying calm, he said his time had come and that he must go first. While speaking, he coughed up a mouthful of blood, and with his final breath, made one last request of his grandson. "Don't say that," cried Bu Yunseal, his face pale with fear as he tried to hold his grandfather. But Janyang stopped him, and with deadly seriousness, said, "Seola, Bu Yunseal, listen to me carefully." His final command was clear and absolute. Never, ever, think about revenge. Yunseal's eyes filled with tears, but he clenched his teeth. His pain turned into powerless rage. Ignoring his grandfather's wish, he shouted with a murderous intent in his eyes, "I cannot forgive them for what they have done to you." He clung to his grandfather's robe, the only relative he had ever known, and expressed his despair. He declared that he would rather follow his grandfather to the afterlife, as a world without him was not worth living. Upon hearing this, Janyang closed his eyes, his face contorted with pain, knowing his grandson was suffering so deeply. He sadly confessed that he had always thought he could die in peace, but his grandson's pain prevented him. With his last words, he asked Yunseal to go far away and told him that the days they had spent together had made him very happy. Foen Tuet's eyes widened in shock as his grandfather's body collapsed and fell from his arms. Janyang's body fell lifeless to the ground, and with it, his grandson's entire world. The boy sat there motionless, his face pale from grief and shock, whispering his grandfather's name. Janyang's body lay silently, and Yunseal's gaze filled with unbearable anguish. But as the tears dried, his gaze hardened, and his expression became empty, soulless. He carried his grandfather's body back home to perform the final rites, as they had been taught. While caressing his grandfather's face, he finally understood his last words, but his own heart made a different decision. His eyes turned an intense red with hatred, and he whispered, "But I cannot obey you." With a face full of unyielding thirst for vengeance, he silently swore he would not rest. In his mind, he relived the attack, realizing that his grandfather's arms had been cut off with a single, powerful slash. He analyzed the battle, identifying an extremely rare movement, an upward sword slash from below. He continued his mental autopsy, seeing how the assassin altered his attack at the last second to pierce his grandfather's eyes. He clenched his teeth with rage. Such a grotesque and unique sword technique could only mean one thing. His knowledge of the dead told him that such a wound could only be caused by a demonic sword art, probably the art of the celestial yoga. Then, when examining his grandfather's back, he found something even more puzzling. He discovered 93 hidden weapon marks, far more than could be launched even by the famous technique of the storm of 10,000 flowers. He concluded that it was not an accomplice, but a special device, the incense device that can fire hundreds of hidden weapons at once. And the final proof he found when examining the tongue and nails. Unmistakable signs of poisoning by the toxin of the decadent blood of rotten flesh. Bu Yunseal connected all the clues. A master of the demonic path who wielded a hidden weapons device and used the toxin of the decadent blood. She knew the number of people fitting such a specific and powerful profile had to be incredibly small. She closed her eyes, the image of her lifeless grandfather engraved in her mind, and her resolve hardened. When she opened them again, blood welled from her eyes as she made a vow. I will definitely find you. A single tear, mixed with blood, fell onto the record page of the Demon Hall. She had presented herself at the demonic martial alliance, the first step in her new and sole purpose. The guards mocked him, calling him a coward, but fell silent when he bit his thumb to draw blood. With a bloodied thumb, he sealed his pact, knowing that his old life had ended the day his grandfather died. Now, the only thing left to him in the world was the unbreakable path of revenge. And the tournament of the 10 demon successors, he realized, would be the first and bloody step on that path. The Demon Hall's proposal was bold. Regardless of faction, 10 prodigies would inherit the secret martial arts of the 10 demonic sects. This unprecedented offer, promising to teach the forbidden arts of the demonic heaven, attracted countless ambitious youths from across the martial world. Bu Yunseal's eyes scanned the crowd, watching the hundreds of aspirants filling the large hall. Inside the room, all kinds of warriors could be found, and none of them seemed to have friendly intentions. While everyone else assessed the competition, Bu Yunseal remained silent, analyzing everyone around him. He realized that many present emitted a strange aura, a feeling of latent power and danger. But his search was more specific. His eyes scrutinized each individual, seeking a connection. He wondered if among this crowd there could be someone related to the mysterious assassin of his grandfather. To avenge a master of that caliber, he too had to reach that level of power, but he currently had no sect or martial arts. With unbreakable determination, he clenched his fists. Becoming a demon successor was his only path to strengthen himself quickly. Suddenly, silence fell over the crowd as an imposing and majestic figure made his entrance. He was a tall, muscular man, dressed in a white fur coat, whose very presence radiated overwhelming authority. With a thunderous voice, he introduced himself. I am Chief Instructor awakens, also known as the Golden Arm of Bloody Eyes. A murmur of awe and fear swept through the hall. Everyone knew the fearsome reputation of the famous instructor. With a stern look, awakens declared the purpose of this place, to select the greatest prodigies of the demonic path. His words resonated with weight, explaining that only those who passed all the tests would become official candidates. Then, with a gesture of his hand, he announced the first test without further ado. The masters of the Demon Hall would personally examine the bones and muscles of each aspirant. The crowd erupted in protests, considering a simple physical inspection an absurd test. But the examiners dressed in black moved quickly, beginning to evaluate the candidates one by one with painful precision. One examiner declared in a monotone voice, "You pass. Come here." As the evaluated aspirant moved forward with a mixture of relief and confusion. Bu Yunseal watched silently, wondering if simply passing this test would lead to the next phase. Finally, one of the imposing examiners stood before him, ready to begin the inspection. The man grabbed Yunseal's shoulder to assess his physical structure. But the moment he touched him, the examiner's face twisted into a grimace of pure disbelief. He squeezed harder. His surprise turned into shock as he realized the truth. The diagnosis was unthinkable. This young man's bones and muscles were completely ruined. The examiner was perplexed. It was a true miracle that someone in his condition could even participate in the tournament. But as he pondered this, Bu Yunseal's eyes, filled with a silent hatred, glowed with a red light. The examiner felt a chill. The murderous intent emanating from this fragile boy was stronger than anyone he had ever known. Although deeply impressed by his spirit, the examiner turned away after a brief cough. Despite his potential, he could not allow someone with such a damaged body to pass the test. Bu Yunseal pressed his lips. Deep down, he had already expected this outcome. He reflected that all he had learned in his life were the techniques for washing corpses. He was not prepared for a test like this. Still, as he lowered his hand, he knew he could not allow his path to end here. A loud announcement echoed across the courtyard. The first test had officially concluded, but a candidate who had also failed clenched his teeth, unable to accept the verdict. With a face flushed with anger, he confronted Chief Instructor awakens directly. He shouted, questioning the purpose of the tournament if successors were chosen solely based on their physique. "This is completely unfair," he declared, his voice full of frustration and defiance. Chief Instructor Hayakaran, who had been resting with his eyes closed, whispered the word, unfair. Then, he calmly explained that the most crucial element in learning martial arts was, in fact, a solid physical foundation. He looked at the protester and mocked him. How dare you demand justice when you don't even meet the most basic requirement? The aspiring fighter, intimidated, stammered that he at least deserved a chance to prove his worth. Hayakaran's eyes shone with a dangerous light as he told the man not to worry. He declared that the second test was designed precisely to find prodigies who could master martial arts despite a weak constitution. Then, he turned around and announced that the second test would begin at that very moment. With a cold and ruthless gaze, he revealed the nature of the test. From now on, you will kill each other. The crowd was horrified and silent, trying to process the order to fight to the death to secure their place. The protester finally understood the cruel irony. He had asked for a chance, and they had given him the chance to die. A fierce-looking warrior smiled maliciously. If he had to kill anyway, this was the perfect opportunity. His eyes fixed on two women across the courtyard. He clearly had an old grudge to settle. He gripped his weapon tightly, ready to be the first to act in this deadly arena. With a war cry, he charged at his target, declaring that he would start with her. The first attack broke the tension, and the arena, which had previously been full of contenders, turned into a chaotic battlefield. The other contestants, who had hesitated until then, realized with horror that the test was truly to the death. Throughout the arena, old rivalries and personal grudges exploded into deadly duels. Warriors who knew each other, like Wei Unchong and Jik Ryong, were forced to fight for their lives. But amid the growing carnage, Bu Yunseal remained motionless, a silent observer at the center of the storm. The first victim fell to the ground, eyes wide with surprise, sending a clear message to everyone. The massacre had begun. From her position, Bu Yunseal coldly analyzed the dead man's wound. The blade had missed the ribs and pierced the heart. The victor of that duel, Wei Unchong, raised his bloodied spear and arrogantly challenged all the others. From his platform, Instructor Hayakaran watched him and dismissed him as a fool lacking perception. An examiner beside him agreed, thinking that in a free-for-all battle, boasting about your strength only makes you the target of everyone. This was exactly what Bu Yunseal had anticipated. The first murder would act as a catalyst, forcing the others to fight. Panic spread like wildfire, and the test became a chaotic and desperate massacre. An applicant accidentally killed another and was paralyzed by the horror of his own action. That single moment of hesitation was a fatal mistake, as he was stabbed in the back the very next instant. The instructor watched the predictable carnage, silently reflecting from his elevated position. The courtyard filled with the sounds of screams and steel as the applicants frantically fought for the sole surviving spot. A young applicant clutched his head in terror, his mind breaking under the violence surrounding him. Others fought with wild desperation, their faces twisted into masks of fear and fury. The instructor's monologue continued. The less accustomed young people are to death, the easier it is for fear to paralyze their reason. But as he watched the predictable chaos, something unexpected caught Hayakaran's attention. A rare smile of amusement appeared on his face as he leaned forward. The examiner beside him saw it too, his own surprise reflected in his face. It seemed that among the crowd of panicked fighters, there were a few who were not fools. Bu Yunseal was one of them, perfectly calm and serene as she watched the weak devour each other. While most fought blindly, these few figures stood firm like islands in a storm, observing and waiting. And from Yunseal's perspective, they were all simply fools, leading themselves to the slaughter. Bu Yunseal understood the true nature of the test. The goal was not to kill, but to be the last one standing. He crouched beside a body, reminding himself that if he kept calm and thought clearly, he could survive. As he did so, he recalled the promise he made to himself after his grandfather's death. He would survive at all costs. So, while others fought, he began using his funeral skills to examine the bodies, gathering information. A warrior wearing a blue shirt wielding a chain flail pushed his way through the crowd. He saw Bu Yunseal sitting calmly and mocked him, thinking he was just a coward hiding. But Yunseal was not hiding. He was analyzing the wounds, noting that a victim had been killed with a swift and flexible sword. The man in the blue shirt, seeing an easy target, attacked Yunseal without hesitation. However, a flash of a sword appeared out of nowhere, and the man in the blue shirt fell dead instantly. A new warrior stepped forward, telling Yunseal not to thank him, as he had only used him as bait to lure the man. Bu Yunseal ignored the newcomer and continued examining the body of the flail-wielding man. The new warrior, Nung Ungang, mocked Yunseal, noting that she seemed perceptive but clearly had no martial arts training. As he spoke, he effortlessly deflected a surprise attack from behind, demonstrating his own skill. With a cruel smile, he reminded Yunseal that he could kill a weakling like her at any time. From a distance, Instructor Hyakrian watched, his attention now focused on the newcomer. He recognized Nung Ungang's sword as Sukjong, the lost weapon of the legendary Master Mukhian. An examiner reported that Nung Ungang had found Mukhian's secret manual, but since he was self-taught, his style was imperfect. Still, Hyakrian considered him Mukhian's de facto disciple and a strong candidate to become the demon's successor. He was impressed, admitting that although the boy was not worthy of the sword, probably no one else in the arena was stronger than him. The examiner agreed, predicting that Nung Ungang would be the ultimate victor unless a surprise occurred. After a long while, Nung Ungang cleaned his sword, satisfied with the massacre he had caused. His eyes settled on the only figure still standing amid the field of corpses. He approached Bu Yunseal, acknowledging that she had managed to survive until the end. Amid the deathly silence, surrounded by the bodies of the fallen, the last two survivors faced each other. Nung Ungang smiled arrogantly, confident in his imminent victory. He told Yunseal that if he defeated him, he would become an official candidate for the 10 demonic successors. With overflowing confidence, he provoked him to fight. "Come on." But his opponent did not react. He simply stood there, watching him with disturbing calm. Bu Yunseal's eyes were devoid of emotion as he thought, "He is the strongest here." But his next thought revealed his hidden confidence. "But I've already discovered his weakness." With a calmness that contrasted with the carnage around him, Bu Yunseal slowly walked toward his opponent. Nung Ungang, full of arrogance, looked up and welcomed the challenge. "Let's see what you're capable of." Without further ado, Nung Ungang launched into the attack, unleashing a flurry of slashes. Although Yunseal managed to dodge, some of the strikes hit him, but he continued forward unfazed. Nung Ungang laughed disdainfully, mocking his opponent's clumsy defensive moves. "Is dodging pathetically like that all you can do? It's a miracle you've survived this long." Meanwhile, the examiners watched carefully, realizing there was more than met the eye. They noticed that although he seemed overwhelmed, Yunseal was subtly adjusting his position at the end of each strike. With each movement, he turned his body just enough to avoid a deadly blow, receiving only superficial wounds. Suddenly, the examiner had a shocking revelation. He was memorizing the attack patterns by studying the corpses that Nung Ungang had left behind. The examiner couldn't help but feel a shiver of admiration for Yunseal's incredible and macabre observational ability. After dodging a series of attacks, Bu Yunseal finally stopped and spoke, her voice dripping with contempt. With deadly calm, she criticized her opponent. What a pathetic handling of the sword. She continued her mockery, pointing out that despite so many fierce attacks, he had only managed to scratch her slightly. These words infuriated Nung Ungang, who couldn't believe this nobody dared to provoke him. He clenched his fists, his mind filled with rage. Dodging was one thing, but how dare she belittle him? He decided he had enough of this game and that it was time to end it. With a cruel smile, he told Yunseal that although he had intended to let her live a little longer, her arrogance had cost her life. He lunged forward like a predator, shouting that he would grant her the swift death she wished for. As Nung Ungang's speed increased, he drew ever closer to his motionless prey. Seeing the impending final attack, Bu Yunseal prepared herself, her face a mask of concentration. He knew there would be no second chance. This was his only opportunity to counterattack. He began to recall what he had learned while examining the bodies of Nung Ungang's victims. He had noticed a clear pattern amid the chaos. His opponent's lethal strikes always targeted the weak points. He observed that the bodies only had wounds in two places, the heart and the head. Therefore, he knew that when Nung Ungang attacked with true murderous intent, his sword would always aim for the upper body. If that's the case, he thought, as his opponent lunged with a downward strike. At the last second, he ducked to avoid the deadly blow, surprising Nung Ungang. And before his opponent could react, Bu Yunseal aimed his own dagger, not at the neck, but at a different vital point. At that critical moment, a familiar voice echoed in Bu Yunseal's mind. It was his grandfather, reminding him of a lesson about the pressure point Nyan Dole, a weak spot that even masters found difficult to train. The lesson continued. A precise strike on that point, even from a child, could render an adult unconscious. This lesson gave him the confidence he needed, and with deadly precision, he drove his sword into his opponent's neck. Nung Ungang, the self-taught prodigy, collapsed to the ground, defeated by a single blow. Bu Yunseal remained motionless for a moment, her body and mind pushed to the limit. Then, she turned towards the silent observers and asked, "Is it over?" The examiner could only look at him, completely stunned by the incredible turn of events. Instructor Hyacryan, on the other hand, appeared clearly disappointed by the outcome. "I had high hopes. As it was Mook Hyen's swordsmanship," he murmured to himself. The sound of a drum echoed across the arena, and the instructor's voice announced the result. "Fowen Tuet, of the Burning Sun sect, you have passed the second test." But the victor remained motionless, his body finally succumbing to exhaustion and pain. As he lost consciousness, a familiar and comforting voice called out to him from afar. It was his grandfather, searching for him in a white, ethereal void. "Tuet Ni, where are you?" In his dream, he was a child again, happily running towards his grandfather's voice. He ran toward the distant figure, shouting, "I'm here, grandfather, I'm here." But when he finally reached him, his grandfather turned around, and the dream turned into a nightmare. His grandfather's eyes were empty, bleeding sockets, and he whispered that he could not see his grandson. Terror seized him, and with a muffled scream, Fowen Tuet suddenly woke up. He looked around, disoriented, and realized he was not in the arena, but in the hold of a ship. He must have fainted from the blood loss, he concluded as he touched his head. Then, he noticed that his wounds had been expertly bandaged. Despite the severity of his injuries, he barely felt any pain, which made him wonder if the Demon Hall had brought in a famous doctor. But his thoughts were interrupted when he realized he was not alone. Others were silently watching him. He recognized some of the faces. They were those who had passed the first test, the elites. Suddenly, one of them laughed, breaking the silence and drawing the attention of the others. Bu Yunseal sighed inwardly, noticing the looks of disdain directed at her. It was a reaction she had already expected. A voice from above ordered them to disembark, as they had reached their destination. They were informed that the next test would take place in a place known as Hell Island. In the midst of an endless ocean, a ship sailed toward a new destination as the sun set. The ship finally stopped at a desolate port in front of an imposing mountain. A figure jumped from the ship to the shore and declared gravely, "This is hell." Following the guide's orders, the survivors disembarked and began climbing the mountain. Upon reaching their destination at sunset, the guide showed them their new lodging. It was a series of caves dug into the mountainside, where they were told to leave their belongings. The choice was free. Everyone could choose whichever cave they wanted and settle there. While most of the candidates hurried to find a spot, Bu Yunseal stayed behind, observing. She watched silently as everything unfolded, her face calm and her eyes analyzing every detail. After a while, she finally began to move, walking among the others with a quiet purpose. As the candidates settled in, some found places they found surprisingly comfortable. But it wasn't long before arguments broke out among the elite candidates over the most desirable spots. A young woman in a pink robe confronted another, insisting that she had seen a particular cave first. The man mocked her, saying he had arrived first, and that merely looking at it didn't give her the right to claim it. While they argued, a third person tried to mediate, suggesting there were many other good spots. Bu Yunseal watched the scene with disinterest, thinking to herself about the naivety of these people. They have no idea what happened in the second test, she thought. They completely lack a sense of urgency. Looking more closely, she realized that many of those who passed the first test wore expensive and luxurious clothes. She concluded that most of them must be descendants of noble and wealthy families. And with that conclusion came an even darker one. The second test was not just a test, but a filter to eliminate those whose deaths would cause no problems. While Bu Yunseal was lost in his thoughts, a sudden voice startled him. "Haven't you decided yet?" asked the examiner, suddenly appearing by his side. With a slightly hesitant voice, Yunseal turned toward her, his face a mixture of surprise and caution. "You've been unusually slow," she continued. "This is no time to dawdle." The examiner stared at him intently, her face serious as she called him by his full name. Fowen Tuet. His mind was filled with curiosity. He wondered what choice this remarkable survivor would make. "There's not much time left," she said, her voice cold and sharp. Decide quickly. Under the pressure, Yunseal finally made a decision, pointing to a distant cave. He pointed to the smaller, more miserable-looking cave, from which a dirty liquid seemed to drip. The other hopefuls mocked his choice, deeming it fitting for his ragged and humble appearance. An aspirant with a noble appearance sneered disdainfully, while another smiled at the red-eyed woman. But Bu Yunseal simply ignored them, his face a mask of indifference to their looks of contempt. The young man headed toward his chosen cave, paying no attention to the whispers of the others. "How disgusting," said one of the nobles, displeased with the choice and with Yunseal herself. But the examiner, observing him, smiled to herself, thinking, "He really is a prodigy." While the others saw only a filthy cave, she knew the interior was spacious and perfect for training. And most importantly, its narrow entrance made it a natural fortress, ideal for defending against ambushes. Most people had overlooked it, but Yunseal had inspected it carefully and had seen its hidden value. "Good," she said, impressed by his strategic mind. "Prepare immediately." Yunseal simply glanced at her over her shoulder as she walked away. After everyone had changed into their new uniforms, they gathered once more. The examiner addressed the group to explain the next phase of their training on the path of hell. She revealed that the area contained 10 martial halls, each dedicated to the arts of one of the 10 great masters of the Demon Hall. She explained they had complete freedom to choose which arts they wanted to learn, whether one or all. "Sleep, play, train," she said. "Your time is yours to use as you wish." But Bu Yunseal suspected immediately. She did not believe that the people who had designed the bloody second test were so generous. Still, the other candidates, especially the nobles, were excited and were already deciding where to go. Most agreed that the Hall of the Sword of the Firestorm was the best choice, as it was rumored to be the strongest. A large crowd quickly formed, all heading in the same direction toward the most popular hall. After all, it was home to the techniques of the most powerful master, an irresistible lure for the ambitious. Bu Yunseal observed the crowd and wondered to himself whether learning the strongest martial art would truly be beneficial. "For me, who has never learned any technique, what I need now is not the most advanced arts." His eyes narrowed with strategic focus as he considered his next move. While the crowd headed in one direction, he turned around and chose a different, lonelier path. His path led him to a small, dilapidated cabin hidden in the forest. He stared at the decrepit building, wondering if a place like this could really be one of the legendary martial halls. Then he remembered what he had heard. This was the Manhwa Pavilion, a fallen hall that nevertheless had produced countless masters throughout history. He also recalled the stories his grandfather had told him about the martial world and the true nature of strength. Then, this will be the place, he decided. But just as he did, a strange feeling stopped him. He noticed a strange energy emanating from the ground beneath his feet, and before he could react, the ground erupted. From the earth itself, the head of a man emerged, his eyes glowing with fierce intensity. "Have you come here with the intention of becoming one of the 10 martial masters?" the man asked. This was Sao, the master of the secret hall of the Manhwa Pavilion. Bu Yunseal faced the strange master, her initial surprise quickly turning into a calm composure. With a respectful gesture, she declared her purpose. "I have come to learn the martial arts of the Manhwa Pavilion." Master Sao scrutinized him from head to toe, his eyes judging the spirit and physique of the young man. "I have no intention of teaching martial arts," Sao said disdainfully, "especially to someone as fragile as you." But Yunseal was undeterred and revealed that she knew the secret of his art, that it granted the greatest vitality in the world. The master warned her that her training would begin with a painful remodeling of the body, a process that would kill someone in Yunseal's condition in less than a day. However, instead of retreating, Bu Yunseal knelt and began to bow, her determination unbreakable even in the face of death. "Since you insist on teaching me personally," said Bu Yunseal cleverly, "as a disciple, I must bow." Master Sao was astonished at the boy's audacity, calling him crazy in his thoughts. Finally, Sao emerged completely from the ground, yielding but making it clear that he was doing so only by order of the Demon Hall. "I am Sao, the master of the secret hall of the Manhwa Pavilion." He formally introduced himself. "From now on, call me Master Sao." When Yunseal tried to introduce himself, the master abruptly interrupted him with a no. He declared that, from that moment forward, Yunseal would have no name. He would simply be apprentice number 1. "No more talking," said Sao. "We will begin right now." Using a strange technique, he sent 2 pulses of energy directly into Yunseal's eyes. In an instant, the boy's vision was completely taken away, his pupils dilating into black voids. Submerged in a world of total and absolute darkness, Yunseal's brutal training had finally begun. "Don't worry," said Master Cao's voice from the darkness. "I have only temporarily sealed your sight with a secret technique." He explained that this was the first and necessary step to learning the fundamental art of his school. This art was known as the Beast's Path, a technique that required first mastering Bongak's basic unarmed martial arts. The Beast's Path, he explained, was an art that not only maximized all the senses, but also granted the reflexes of a wild animal. Unlike other arts, its fundamentals were as difficult to master as any advanced technique, since they depended heavily on the practitioner's own illumination. Because of this legendary difficulty, the number of people willing to accept the challenge had dwindled to almost none over the years. However, the master continued, "If you manage to master it, you will literally acquire the sharpened senses of a true wild beast," he declared, his voice full of power. Then, with a grim smile, he added the harsh reality. "Well, most people simply die before getting that far." He gave Yunseal her first task. She had 1 hour to get used to the blindness, and then the master would return. At first, Yunseal felt completely disoriented. Her other senses did not sharpen to compensate for the loss of sight. She remembered the master's words. An average person would take about an hour to adapt to blindness. But for Yunseal, whose time was precious, an hour was a luxury she could not afford. "I have to get used to this as quickly as possible," she thought, forcing her body to move, to stumble, to learn. She knew she was vulnerable. In this place filled with killers, an ambush in her current state would be fatal. And just as she feared, a shadowy figure appeared behind her, weapon raised, ready to strike. But his instincts, honed by his training and sharpened by danger, allowed him to sense the attack just in time. With a reflexive movement, he managed to dodge the deadly blow, his body reacting faster than his conscious mind. And in that instant, while evading death, he had an epiphany. Without his sight, the true key was his sense of balance. Meanwhile, Master Cao waited outside, assuming his new student would be completely lost, unaware of the rapid evolution happening in the darkness. When Master Cao returned, he was surprised to find his new student not lost, but moving with purpose. He noticed that the boy's method was unusual. Most people would passively wait for their senses to adapt to the darkness. But Yunseal was actively struggling, creating imaginary opponents to force his body to learn and adapt. The master began to understand the reason for his incredibly fast progress. His movements were dynamic and fluid, filled with deadly purpose even in total darkness. This proactive approach, this refusal to wait passively, was allowing him to adapt to blindness at an astonishing speed. Seeing that he was already accustomed, Cao smiled and decided it was time to move on to the next stage of training. He drew his sword and threw him a new challenge. "From now on, try to dodge my sword." Time passed, and Yunseal's skill grew exponentially, to the point where he could face the master in a fight under the pouring rain. Blind and guided only by balance and instinct, Yunseal was forging himself into a completely new and dangerous kind of warrior. Master Cao's training method was simple, brutal, and direct. Day after day, he attacked his new and only student mercilessly, giving him no moment of respite. Cao was perplexed. For 3 days straight, the boy had endured the beatings in stoic silence, without a single complaint. Although his body was covered with bruises and wounds, Yunseal's will remained completely intact. Finally, the master's curiosity got the better of him, and he asked why he never questioned the harsh and seemingly senseless training. Yunseal replied with a simple yet profound logic. "You said the essence of the Nanjia Pavilion lies in enlightenment, so I assumed all your actions had a reason." The master was momentarily taken aback by the boy's deep understanding and unwavering faith. With a smile of genuine pride, Cao confirmed that this was, indeed, the correct answer. "Well then," he shouted, "let's continue," and launched an even fiercer attack, satisfied with his disciple. The blows continued, but they were no longer a test. Instead, they were the true lessons of a master to his worthy successor. In total darkness, a new sense awakened in Yunseal. He could finally feel the path of the sword. But he realized a crucial truth. Although his mind could now perceive the attack, His ruined body was still too slow to dodge it. If he couldn't dodge, he had only one desperate option left. He had to use his new perception not to evade, but to find the master's blade and block it directly. He put every ounce of his being and will into that single, desperate block. Master SaitamaQhh did not hold back, unleashing the power of his fastest and quietest technique. And to his complete and utter surprise, the boy succeeded, blocking the legendary silent sword technique. The master couldn't believe it. Yunseal had reached this incredible level of perception in only 3 days of training. Although he managed to block the attack, the immense force of the blow sent him flying through the air. Injured but victorious, he received a bamboo canteen, a clear sign of recognition from his now truly impressed master. With gratitude, Yunseal took the bamboo canteen and thanked his master. Master SaitamaQhh watched him silently, knowing the true value of the gift he had given. But upon drinking, Yunseal was surprised. It was not water, but an elixir that made a powerful energy flow through his body. He felt all the blood and vitality he had lost instantly restored, healing his wounds. From a distance, Master SaitamaQhh smiled, revealing in his thoughts that he had given him the celestial spring water he had treasured all his life. But he did not consider it a waste, nor did he regret his decision. A pure and uncontrollable joy filled his heart, a satisfaction he had awaited his entire life. Because finally, after a long and solitary search, he had found the number one genius under the sky. The training resumed, but now things were different. With his body restored and strengthened, Yunseal's skill had reached an entirely new level. The boy now moved like lightning, his reflexes and speed greatly enhanced by the elixir. It was no longer a one-sided beating. Now it was a true fight, a sword dance between two masters. A smile of pure joy appeared on SaitamaQh's face. This was the disciple of his dreams. He launched an even stronger attack, shouting with excitement, no longer to test him, but as a true combat companion. And for the first time, Yunseal met his master's sword on equal terms. Their swords clashed with incredible force, filling the air with sparks. He put every ounce of his being into each parry. His face was a mask of concentration. Master SaitamaQhh was euphoric, unleashing his techniques with a ferocity he had never shown before. The clash of their wills and blades echoed through the quiet forest clearing. A bond had formed between them, not just of master and student, but of true martial rivals. The training was relentless, forging Yunseal into a warrior capable of matching his master. Now he could face each strike, his senses sharpened to the maximum in the darkness. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the training stopped, leaving Yunseal breathless and confused. Master SaitamaQhh burst into a laugh of pure joy. He had found the genius he had long sought. As a sign of recognition, he restored his sight and called him by his true name, Yunseal. He made him an incredible offer. Forget becoming a demon champion. Become my official disciple. SaitamaQhh promised that, under his tutelage, he would become a supreme master in just 10 years. Yunseal knew the offer was genuine, a shortcut to immense power, but still he hesitated. He remembered the overwhelming power of the monster that killed his grandfather, a level of strength he still couldn't comprehend. And he knew that, to face such an enemy, the arts of a single pavilion, no matter how profound, would not be enough. But Yunseal rejected the offer, declaring an even greater ambition. I will become one of the 10 demon champions. His master was astonished. The boy had rejected a safe and guaranteed path for an almost impossible dream. SaitamaQhh mocked him, explaining that learning the arts of the 10 sects was a feat not even the legendary celestial demon had achieved. The true path to power, he explained, was to master a single art perfectly suited to one's body and energy flow. Yunseal respectfully apologized for rejecting his generous offer, but her decision was firm and unshakable. Master SaitamaQhh saw in her eyes such fierce and pure determination that he could not ignore it. Very well, he finally said, accepting his student's foolish ambition. Then from now on, you will learn a different martial art. Faced with Yunseal's confusion, SaitamaQhh explained that the true arts of his sect were not learned through texts or oral formulas. They were learned directly, body to body, through the pain and experience of real combat. And so, Yunseal's next lesson began with the sharp edge of her master's sword. After a period of intense training, Master Cao declared that Yunseal had learned the basics of the beast's way. It was then that Bu Yunseal had a sudden revelation about the true nature of her training. She understood that her master's brutal and seemingly random attacks were actually the initial and fundamental forms of that very art. With his training in the pavilion completed, he offered his master his most sincere gratitude. He swore never to forget his master's generosity, both for the teaching and for the precious spiritual medicine that saved his life. But the master's response was harsh and simple. Forget it. Yunseal was left confused by his master's cold rejection of his gratitude. Cao gave him one last lesson. In the treacherous martial world, it is better not to carry the burden of debts or grudges. And the boy understood that this was the rough but genuine way his master cared for him. With one last deep bow, Bu Yunseal left the Nanjia pavilion, stronger, wiser, and ready to continue his journey. Master Cao watched his disciple leave, now transformed into a different and more dangerous man. He smiled to himself, wondering where a hidden dragon, like him, had come from, and predicted that a storm of blood would soon sweep through the Hell Dominion. And so, Bu Yunseal began his journey to the other halls, now armed with the heightened senses of a beast. But his new power was as much a curse as it was a blessing. The constant sensory overload was quickly exhausting him. He realized that if he did not learn to control it, this overwhelming power would prevent him even from resting properly. His first step was to learn to suppress his senses at will, to calm the furious storm inside his mind. He concentrated deeply, imagining that he was shutting off the flow of sensory information like a water tap. It was a difficult and exhausting struggle to bring such a wild and powerful sense under his conscious control. But after great effort, he finally managed to quiet his mind, finding a moment of peace in the midst of chaos. With his new power finally under control, he pulled out his map, ready to plan the next step of his revenge. Bu Yunseal realized that her time in the Hell Realm was limited and that she had to act quickly. If she wanted to become stronger as fast as possible, she had only one logical option. She had to seek the arts of a legend who, it was said, had rivaled the heavenly demon himself 700 years ago. Her destiny was the sect founded by that legendary master, the emperor of the Hua Wu sword, Ji Quan. Soon, she arrived before the great martial hall of the Hua Wu sword sect. After the humble and ruined hut of the Nanjia pavilion, this place seemed like a magnificent royal palace to her. She knocked on the imposing wooden doors, her arrival breaking the silence of the secluded hall. A disciple opened the door, clearly surprised to see a visitor in this place at this hour. The disciple's eyes widened with surprise, though it was unclear whether he recognized her or was simply shocked by the interruption. Without wasting time, Bu Yunseal made a respectful bow and declared her desire to learn the arts of the Hua Wu sword sect. The disciple guided Bu Yunseal into the great martial hall, their footsteps echoing in the quiet interior. As they walked, he explained that the arts of his sect were incredibly extensive and required a huge amount of time to master. Then he asked curiously why she had arrived half a month late, when the other aspirants were already well advanced in their training. Yunseal calmly explained that she had spent the past 2 weeks training at the Nanjia pavilion. The disciple was surprised to hear this, doubting that anyone could master the difficult beast path arts in such a short time. Secretly, he assumed that the eccentric Nanjia master had simply gotten rid of Yunseal to avoid the trouble of teaching her. Then, the disciple formally introduced himself as Jingak, the instructor of the sect's beginner hall. As an instructor, Jingak gave Yunseal one last chance to leave, suggesting that another hall might be more suitable for her. But Yunseal's will was firm. She respectfully thanked him for the advice, but insisted that she would stay. Seeing her unwavering determination, Jingak accepted his new and mysterious student and prepared to begin the lesson. Instructor Jingak began the lesson with a powerful and elegant demonstration of his sword art. Then, he unrolled a large scroll and presented it to Yunseal, explaining that it contained the 13 basic forms of his style. But Bu Yunseal could only look at the complex and swirling characters on the scroll with complete confusion. With disarming honesty, she asked the instructor what exactly she was supposed to do with it. Jingak was left dumbfounded with disbelief. He could not comprehend the question. Don't you know how to read the sword diagrams? Yunseal's simple and direct answer only confirmed his fears and increased his confusion. I can't. The young woman explained that before arriving at the demon hall, she had never formally studied the art of the sword in her life. The gap between the instructor, who relied on formal teaching, and the funerary, who learned by instinct and observation, was immense. And Jingak's initial disbelief quickly began to turn into growing frustration and anger. She explained that she had never in her life formally studied the art of the sword. The gap between the formal instructor and the intuitive funerary was immense, and Jingak's disbelief quickly began to turn into frustration and anger. Disbelief seized instructor Jingak. So, are you saying that you have never received sword training? Yunseal's response was a simple, that's right. But for Jingak, this revelation began to make sense of his previous observations. The records labeled him as a scholar, and his movements in the second trial lacked any formal sword style. Still, he found it surprising that he couldn't even read a basic sword manual. But shifting perspective, he recalled the incredible reflexes and attention to detail Yunseal demonstrated in overcoming the second trial, and the sharp judgment shown in choosing his cave to live in. The instructor realized that this young man was truly starting from nothing. Then, with proper instruction, his potential was unimaginable. With renewed determination, Jingak changed his teaching method. Even if you can't fully interpret the manual, you can recognize the letters, right? Read this. He pointed to a scroll that taught the first lesson, how to relax the body and flow effortlessly. First, relaxing the body means loosening the muscles and moving smoothly when using a sword technique. Jingak explained. You especially need to relax the tension in your abdomen and hips. Bu Yunseal awkwardly tried to follow the instruction. Like this? While Jingak reflected on the irony of the situation, it's strange to teach the basics in a place that selects the warriors of the heavenly demon. Jingak corrected his posture. Stand up straight again. When you stiffen, you block your center. Calm your mind, relax, and flow effortlessly. With fierce determination, Bu Yunseal clenched his fists, absorbing every word and every correction into his being. The instructor couldn't believe it. His posture is correct, he thought. Does he grasp it the very moment I explain it? With a smile of amazement, he praised him aloud. Well done, your posture is excellent. Then, Jingak began guiding him through the sword movements, personally demonstrating the flow of the martial art. Yunseal's energy was explosive, following every instruction with an intensity that even surprised his instructor. This unorthodox but effective teaching method created an instant and productive bond between the master and the prodigy. In an instant, understanding settled in, and his grip on the sword became firm, precise, and full of purpose. He began to move on his own, executing the sword forms with a fluidity and grace that belied his complete lack of prior experience. His eyes shone with a new light, and the tip of his sword reflected the face of a warrior who had fully awakened his innate talent. Just as I thought, this boy has a natural aptitude. Now, Jingak commanded, imagine an opponent in front of you and perform the 13 forms of Hua Wu. Yes, this is the promotion test to the junior hall, he explained. I will feel the intention of the sword in your technique. A test, Yunseal thought. The opportunity came sooner than expected. I must prove my worth here. With astonishing speed and precision, Bu Yunseal got into position, ready to begin. An imaginary enemy, he thought, his gaze hardening. The one I must defeat. In his mind, it was not just any opponent, but the dark and threatening silhouette of his grandfather's murderer. The memory and hatred fueled his spirit, and his grip on the sword tightened, charged with pure murderous intent. With a silent scream, he unleashed his fury. The 13 forms of Hua Wu, first form. Return the wind to its origin. He continued at blinding speed to the 13th form, drifting cloud, veil of mist, unleashing a whirlwind of lethal strikes upon the specter of his vengeance. Watching, Instructor Jingak could hardly believe what he saw. Are those the 13 forms of Hua Wu? The technique of drifting rain was supposed to be soft and agile. It should flow like a cloud or spread like mist, but Yunseal's execution was quite the opposite. The version this young man performed was unexpectedly sharp and filled with a palpable murderous intent. Could he be deliberately altering the form? He thought. Normally, only a great master would dare to do something like this. However, that adapted form contained a murderous will, as if it were directed at the person who killed his mentor or his family. Seeing the famous Hua Wu sect technique twisted in this way made him wonder, what secret is this boy hiding? But something was different. The trajectory of his sword was being reshaped by the flow of energy at his fingertips. Jingak finally began to understand. Is this the influence of the beast path from the Nanjia Pavilion? The more he executed the 13 forms of Hua Wu, the clearer the imprint of that wild sword style became, merging into something entirely new. Yunseal realized the fusion. As much as I long for it, if I fuse them, they will no longer be the 13 forms of Hua Wu, but a completely new style. Aware that he was in a test, he made a decision. I must force it to return to the original dash. But the moment he tried to suppress his instinct, the hatred in his heart ignited, dyeing his eyes a crimson red. As he leapt into the air, the shadow of his imaginary enemy materialized beneath him, darker and more real than ever. That is, the shout echoed in his mind. The one who killed my grandfather. The image of the murderer consumed him completely, and his face contorted into a mask of pure shock and fury. He clenched his teeth with uncontrollable rage, the pain and hatred from that fateful day surging back with overwhelming force. Driven by revenge, all thoughts of control vanished as he launched from the air to deliver a deadly blow. His body moved instinctively, unleashing the 7th sequence of the 13 forms. Overturned the seas, crossed the 4 oceans. The air filled with the flash of his sword, moving at a dizzying speed in a whirlwind of fast and deadly attacks. In his mind, the image of the assassin moved at an incredible speed, faster than any enemy I've faced so far. Without hesitation, he continued his fierce assault, striking the dark figure again and again. Ugh, he grunted, pushing himself to the limit. I can't give him even a moment to evade. He decided to risk it all on a single move. All the remaining forms unleashed together. Let's unleash it, he shouted in his mind, launching a storm of dozens of sword strikes simultaneously. With a final click, the attack sequence ended, and his sword came to a stop. But at the end, the whirlwind of his sword gave way to a whirlwind of painful memories. Before his eyes, he saw the image of his grandfather being brutally dismembered, his arms severed by the assassin. The horror of the vision left him breathless, his face a mask of shock and exhaustion as cold sweat ran down his skin. Completely physically and emotionally drained, his trembling hand lost its grip, and the sword began to slip from his fingers. As he watched the young man collapse, the instructor thought to himself, in the end, I was defeated. However, he continued in his mind, recognizing that there was more to the chaotic display he had just witnessed. To the astonishment of an exhausted Bu Yunseal, who could barely stand, Jingak calmly declared, You have passed. What we assess in the beginner hall is your mastery of fencing and whether you can apply the 13 forms of Hua Wu in combat. As he spoke with unshakable calm, his own skill was evident in every gesture. And despite the fury and chaos, Jingak concluded, You demonstrated that well enough. Yunseal composed herself, gripping her sword with a new understanding of what she had achieved. That was an excellent execution of the 13 forms of Hua Wu, said Jingak. Proceed to the junior hall. Instructor Jingak, it must have been a hassle to teach someone with no knowledge of the sword, yet you taught me from scratch, guiding me through every move. With a deep and respectful bow, Bu Yunseal thanked him for everything, ready to take the next step on her path of vengeance. Keep training diligently from now on, Jingak advised her with a smile. And, he continued, his tone growing more serious, your sword carries an especially strong killing intent. Be careful not to be consumed by that murderous will. Yunseal took the warning seriously, aware of the dangerous darkness that her own thirst for revenge had awakened. Now I understand, Jingak thought as he watched him leave. It's true he mastered the wild sword style in just 15 days, perhaps because his learning pace is incredibly high. His rise to the junior hall happened much faster than anyone had anticipated. At first, I doubted he would even reach the junior hall, but now I'm convinced, he concluded his thought, as Bu Yunseal opened the large doors to her new challenge. With a knowing smile, he thought that even the junior hall instructor would be greatly surprised. Upon arriving at the intermediate hall doors, Bu Yunseal was met with a cold welcome. I don't know who you are, said instructor Cheonong Wang, but all spots are taken, so leave. Yunseal stood silently at the entrance, facing the instructor's disdainful gaze and the curiosity of the other students. If it took you more than 20 days to learn the fire rain sword art, with that kind of talent, you're just wasting your time here. The reason I was late is because I spent the first 15 days in the Nanjia Hall, Yunseal explained calmly. So you say you weren't slow to learn? The instructor replied, thinking to himself. He must be a brat who ran away from the harsh beast path. All right, since you have passed the beginner's hall, go ahead and take a seat, Anwang finally said. Although I don't know how well you'll be able to keep up, he added disdainfully. Unfazed by the hostility, Yunseal walked with silent purpose through the room, looking for a place among the other apprentices. The tension in the room was palpable. Her late arrival and the instructor's disapproval had already marked her as an outsider. Instructor Cheon Anwang began the lesson. The Thunder Sword in Fire Rain is a sword art composed of swift movements. If you're not skilled, you'll end up injuring your own body. Like the art of the Fire Rain sword, it is a technique difficult to use in real combat. In that regard, more than victory or defeat, I will observe how proficiently you handle the sword. Byok Hansong, step forward, he ordered. Name an opponent for a duel. With a predatory look, Hansong asked, "Can I nominate anyone?" To which the instructor responded affirmatively. "Then, I nominate this man," he declared, pointing with a malicious smile. His finger pointed directly at Bu Yunseal, the newcomer who remained seated in unruffled silence. As the instructor began to protest, Hansong firmly reminded him, "You certainly said I could nominate anyone. What kind of fight are you trying to have with someone who just came from the beginner's hall? Pick someone else," the instructor replied angrily. But before the argument could continue, a calm and confident voice cut through the tension. "I will do it. I accept the duel," Bu Yunseal repeated, much to the surprise of her opponent and the instructor. "I learned the sword from Instructor Jean at the beginner's hall," she explained. "I think I can learn faster by crossing swords with someone else." With skills learned only in the beginner's hall? Is she trying to protect her petty pride? The instructor thought with disdain. "Very well," the instructor finally declared. "Measuring one's own skill is a virtue of a martial artist. I hope your skills are worthy of reaching the advanced hall," he said, testing both duelists. "What luck," Hansong thought. "If I kill this brat, I will be able to solidify my position among so many prodigies." With permission granted, the two opponents met in the center of the hall, ready to begin the fight. "You've got guts, I'll give you that," Hansong said contemptuously. "However, you can't survive in the Murim on guts and bravado alone. Now let's begin." Without wasting a moment, Byok Hansong lunged forward, starting the duel with a fierce and overwhelming attack. The duel began with Byok Hansong unleashing a series of fierce attacks, laughing as he shouted "impressive" at Yunseal's agility. But Yunseal did not just dodge. She met her opponent's sword in a parry that sent sparks flying. Hansong's brute strength was immense, and Yunseal had to exert herself to the fullest to withstand the powerful strike. This clumsy feeling transmitted to my fingers. Huh, he really was a beginner, Hansong thought with arrogant confidence. "Ha, clumsy fool," he mocked. "I'll show you the Thunder Sword and the Rain of Fire." With a shout, Hansong unleashed the advanced technique, launching a rain of sword strikes as fast as lightning upon Yunseal. His victorious laughter abruptly cut off, turning into a puzzled "huh," because his opponent moved through the storm of steel with impossible ease. "This bastard. He's dodging everything." Hansong's disbelief quickly turned into powerless rage as he growled in frustration. Meanwhile, Yunseal remained completely calm, analyzing every move, every pattern, every weakness of her now enraged opponent. As the duel continued, the instructor watched with a critical eye. Byok Hansong. His way of wielding the sword is pathetic. On the other hand, that brat, he thought, his attention fully captured by the newcomer. He's not dodging with speed. It's a movement close to prediction. Don't tell me. Could he have learned the way of the beast? Although they say it's a basic martial art, in reality, it is a supreme art mastered only by the greatest veteran masters. But his logic prevailed. Even if he were an unparalleled prodigy, he couldn't master it in 15 days. Taking a step forward, he interrupted the fight. "You can't be assessed if you only dodge. I said I wanted to see your swordsmanship, not your reflexes." Hearing the order, Bu Yunseal stopped evading and stood firm, preparing her sword for the attack. Her calm expression shifted to one of deadly focus. The time for analysis had ended. With explosive speed, she finally went on the offensive, launching a direct and powerful counterattack. The arrogant Byok Hansong, who until now had only found air, suddenly found himself forced to defend against an opponent he had completely underestimated. "That's the Fire Rain sword art," exclaimed the observing students, recognizing the basic technique. "Humph, a move from the Fire Rain sword art?" thought Hansong. easily deflecting the blow. No, something is subtly different, noticed one of the spectators, sensing a strange sharpness in Yunseal's technique. I can do this with my eyes closed, boasted Hansong, completely blind to the trap closing in around him. But his confidence shattered when the next blow struck him with unexpected force. Ugh, what was that? He thought, cold sweat running down his face as panic began to take hold. Could this bastard be deliberately modifying the sword art just to mock me? He wondered desperately. Is he trying to get the instructor's attention to go straight to the advanced hall? Damn it, at this rate, he realized as he was mercilessly pushed across the training room. He clenched his teeth in fury and desperation, completely overwhelmed by the beginner he had so arrogantly despised. I'm the one who will pass into the advanced hall, shouted Hansong, unleashing a new technique, the Izura sword method. He launched his most powerful move, the blood-breaking strike, an attack designed to utterly annihilate his opponent. A killing move from the Izura sword sect, the instructor thought. I never said they could only use the fire rain sword. But that boy, whose balance on both legs doesn't falter even in this situation. This boy, could it be? His disbelief finally gave way to the truth. He really learned the way of the beast. Damn brat, you're good at dodging here and there, Hansong shouted, his frustration reaching its boiling point. With his eyes glowing with a white, deadly light, he declared, but this is the end. The instructor watched in horror, recognizing the final technique about to be unleashed. That is, it was the ultimate move of his clan. The blood wind annihilates the moon. Byok Hansong launched from the air, putting all his power and murderous intent into one last devastating strike to end the duel. At the moment Hansong's final strike descended, Yunseal met it head-on with her own wooden sword. But it was not a simple block. It was the 13th move of the fire rain swordsmanship art, the martial art of the extremes without beginning. The result of their clash left everyone present, including the instructor, in a state of absolute disbelief. The force of the impact was so immense that several of the wooden swords on the nearby rack shattered from the shockwave. Byok Hansong, who had been so full of arrogance, lay on the ground, coughing up blood. Yunseal stood over her defeated opponent. Her victory was as swift as it was decisive. Her face remained calm, but the intensity of her gaze left no doubt about the power she had just unleashed. The rest of the students no longer saw her as a beginner, but with a mixture of awe and fear. The question hung in the silent air as they looked at Hansong's motionless body. Is he dead? With just one duel, Yunseal had gone from being an outcast to the most dangerous and enigmatic figure in the intermediate hall. As Yunseal returned her sword, the instructor confirmed his suspicions. He's dead. He was struck precisely at the vital donjong point. The instructor questioned another student. Was he originally a disciple of the Nanjia Pavilion? But the answer was negative. So, you're telling me you completely mastered the beast sword in just half a month? He asked. I've only learned the basics, Yunseal replied. The basics? The instructor scoffed. It seems the Nanjia Pavilion now teaches its students to lie first. When another student tried to speak, he was abruptly silenced. Enough excuses. Get this thing out of here immediately. This is absurd. Committing murder during a simple bout. Shouldn't there be punishment? The terrified crowd shouted. This place is a living hell, declared the instructor with a threatening tone. If you use a killing technique, you must be prepared to die from a counterattack. With those brutal words, he announced, the test will now resume. The lesson was learned. The duels that followed became desperate fights for survival, marked by blood and fear. Once the chaotic duels ended, the floor was strewn with defeated apprentices. You have failed the test, the instructor announced coldly. Leave this place immediately and find another martial hall. But it was just a test. If you could give us another chance, they begged, only to be met with a flat impossible. To master the Vows sword, it takes the talent of an unparalleled martial genius who can surpass their own limits through exhausting effort. The reason all of you failed is because you could not do that, he concluded. With one last disdainful get out, the instructor expelled them without any consideration. Soon, the great hall fell silent, with only the instructor and a single remaining student, Yunseal. Why don't you leave? Asked the instructor, apparently including Yunseal in the expulsion. Do I have to go too? Yunseal replied, confused. With an expression of surprise, the instructor clarified. Yes, you won the duel and passed the test. So go up to the advanced hall, he ordered, finally acknowledging the result of Yunseal's extraordinary fight. "If it means advancing, then I'll stay here," declared Bu Yunseal, rejecting promotion to the advanced hall. "Why would you do that?" asked the instructor. "The only sword style I've learned is the 13 forms of Vow, and I haven't learned anything from the intermediate hall yet," Yunseal explained. The instructor suspected. "You mastered the beast sword and dismantled the sword of chaos, and you say you haven't learned anything?" Despite his doubts, the instructor reluctantly accepted. "Fine, I will teach you the Wow Biocrow sword. However," he continued with a stern look, "I despise those who try to pull tricks just to impress. If I find any trace that you have learned another sword style, I will cut off your head on the spot," he threatened. For days later, the instructor watched Yunseal's training with an expression of intense confusion. "This kid," he thought, "I've been watching him for 4 days, but his fencing fundamentals are practically non-existent." The contradiction between his lack of fundamentals and his incredible progress struck him with an astonishing truth. To think he really was someone who had just started learning the sword. He was a genius of a caliber I had never seen before, but the tenacity and obsession this kid possesses are amazing. He trains as if he would die if he didn't master the martial arts every moment. Now I can see how he was able to master the beast sword in just half a month, he thought, finally accepting his genius. Yunseal plunged completely into the Wow Biocrow sword, moving with the speed of lightning, even ignoring his instructor's order to stop. "You can stop now," said the instructor. "It seems you have already grasped the essence of the Wow Biocrow sword." But he explained that, due to its spinning and wide movements, it was a sword style designed for demonstration, almost unusable in real combat. "And yet, you try to use every form in real combat, as if you were trying to kill someone," the instructor pointed out. "Isn't that the original purpose of a sword style?" Yunseal asked. Her question made the instructor reflect. Demonic martial arts require the intent to kill. However, the Wow forest abandoned the killing sword to reach an infinitely high state. At that moment, the instructor realized the profound philosophical divide between the art he taught and the purpose of the man learning it. Yunseal was not learning to cultivate her spirit. She was forging each lesson into a sharp weapon for her revenge. "The killing intent in your mind," the instructor warned. "If you cannot erase it, you will end up creating a martial art that will harm yourself." "You are saying the same as instructor Jean Gak," Yunseal thought, recalling the advice of her previous master. But she realized that this instructor had also lived with a killing sword, speaking not from theory, but from bitter experience. In the past, the instructor had cut down everything in his path, but because of that, his honor, his status, and even his martial arts fell to a lower level. "The assassin's sword seems to lead to a higher state, but in reality, it is an obstacle," he explained. "From now on, you must abandon your killer's intent." His words reminded Yunseal of a similar lesson from her grandfather. "Sola, the pasts of martial artists are stained with pain and misfortune. That's why people in the martial world," her grandfather's voice continued in her memory, "despise talking about their pasts." Confused by the unexpected personal lesson, Yunseal asked the instructor, "Why are you telling me this?" The instructor saw in the young man's eyes the same dark fire that had once consumed him, and in a rare moment of guidance, he tried to steer a genius away from the path of self-destruction that he himself had walked. "I told you, didn't I?" This instructor also harbored an assassin's sword, Yunseal confirmed in his mind. What is your name?" asked the instructor. "I am Bu Yunseal," he replied. "Ah. So when Jean Gak said there was one who survived the second hall, that was you, Bu Yunseal." "You have a big problem," said the instructor seriously, to which Yunseal asked, "What is it?" "You have absolutely no foundation in martial arts," Wang explained bluntly. "Your rivals are prodigies who have trained since childhood. Once you reach the advanced hall, that gap will only widen. To close that gap, you must quickly learn a superior martial art and build a foundation for the Wow sword arts. Therefore, from now on, to close that gap," the instructor began, about to make a proposal. Having witnessed his unprecedented genius, the instructor decided to take a personal interest in Yunseal's development. He offered him a special training path, a unique opportunity to forge the raw prodigy into a true master. "I will teach you the Jianrou Muzang that I myself created," the instructor offered Yunseal. "However, I failed while learning it, and all the nerves in my fingers were severed," he confessed, revealing the dangerous price of power. "It's a sword style that dangerous," and you could even lose the use of your arms. Instead of going to the advanced hall, you could end up crippled. Do you still agree to that? The instructor asked him. For the sake of revenge. Yunseal thought. His determination was ironclad. I would even tear out my own soul. He concluded before accepting the offer with a simple thank you. It took a month from when he began mastering the Jianrou Muzang to when he left the intermediate hall. The head instructor said it was fast, but it still took longer than he expected. He reflected, always pushing himself further. After learning the basic and advanced sword arts, the next step awaited him. Finally, Yunseal stood at the doors of the advanced hall, ready to face the new challenges on his bloody path. Upon entering the advanced hall, Yunseal met his new instructor, an elderly man with a wise and serene appearance. Certainly, the advanced hall feels different, he thought. I can sense an energy in the apprentices unlike that of the intermediate hall, and the contempt in their eyes towards me has vanished, no doubt because I killed Ascension. Cleaning up corpses earns you ridicule, he reflected with bitter irony. But killing a man brings astonishment and admiration, doesn't it? So you are Yunseal. I've heard of you, said the old master. I was about to begin the lesson. Take a seat. Since we have a new apprentice, allow me to explain once again the Huayu sword chant and the 7 teachings. They recited the principles. Ryan Singu, the strength flows through the entire body, and Ipshin Zhengzhong, stand upright with the proper balance. They continued with Ham Hyung Balbei, chest contained, back extended, and Ilbul Misamai P, on the first strike, do not overdo it. Unlike the brutal lessons of the previous hall, this one focused on the philosophy and the internal foundations of the sword art. For Yunseal, it was a completely new approach, one that challenged her combat perspective focused solely on killing and survival. I see. These teachings, without learning the advanced sword arts in the intermediate hall, I wouldn't have understood them. Let's conclude today's Dharma interpretation here, said the master, Yunseal. Come with me for a moment. The instructor led her to a tranquil garden for a private lesson, away from the other students. Mu geometry Singyu geometry means reaching the state where you can defeat an armed opponent even without a sword, the master explained. Holding a simple branch, he infused it with energy and suddenly attacked Yunseal with the speed of a steel blade. Now I will ask you, said the master with piercing eyes. Suppose you are suddenly attacked like this, but your hand holds no sword. How will you wield your swordsmanship? While you were in the intermediate hall, the apprentices here had already mastered the first technique of the Huayu sword. Now, they have entered the stage of the discourse of the sword, a comprehension beyond mere technique. The master's question was not just a test, but an invitation for Yunseal to transcend the limitations of a physical weapon and find the true essence of her sword. If you cannot understand or keep pace with what I am asking now, I will not hesitate to expel you. Answer carefully. If I don't have a sword in my hand, Yunseal began, closing her eyes to concentrate. Then I'll use my opponent's blade, she declared, launching into an attack to prove her words. In an instant, she tried to disarm the master. Her hand closed over where the stick should have been, but she found only air. The instructor had moved faster than her eyes could follow. A hasty judgment, said the master's voice, now from a new position. What the hell? Yunseal thought in panic. He's already behind me. The master's speed was on another level. It was impossible to even predict where he would move. I didn't think I could catch him, he admitted to himself, realizing his own arrogance. At that moment, Yunseal understood the true and unfathomable gap between her raw talent and the mastery of a true grandmaster. But I never expected to be completely unable to follow his movements. Yunseal thought, if I can't prove something here, I won't be allowed to stay in the advanced hall. With renewed determination, she decided on her only option. Raise my beast's perception to the limit, read the direction of his movements. All she needed was a single chance, one moment to predict and react. The master attacked again, his willow branch moving with the grace and lethality of a legendary sword. Yunseal was thrown to the ground, pushed to his absolute limit by the overwhelming skill of the master. Even while wincing in pain, his battered and exhausted body did not give up. And in that final moment, on the ground, his hand lunged out and managed to grab the edge of the instructor's robe. The master burst into laughter, a genuine laugh of surprise and delight. Placing a hand on the exhausted Yunseal's shoulder, he declared with a smile, "You pass." I passed, thought Yunseal, completely confused. I didn't even land a hit. So why? Because tomorrow you will begin to learn Hyan Hyan, the master told him. Be at the training field before dawn. With a respectful bow, Yunseal accepted the order. Yes, understood. As the master walked away, he left Yunseal alone with his thoughts and the mysterious victory. But the master knew the truth. Looking at the willow branch, he saw that a single leaf had been cleanly cut amid the chaos of the fight. Yunseal hadn't realized it, but in that fraction of a second, he had achieved what the master believed impossible. So, even as a wolf cub, a wolf is still a wolf, isn't it? He thought, acknowledging his predator's instinct. A rare smile of genuine amusement appeared on the elderly master's face. Haha. He chuckled to himself as the sun began to rise. This is getting interesting. Today's lesson is over, Yunseal thought, deciding to explore the path of hell instead of resting. Remembering the second hall, she knew that a fight could break out at any moment in this place. Suddenly, a sound broke the silence, and she stopped dead. Footsteps. She closed her eyes, using her sharp perception to count the newcomers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. She turned to find 5 apprentices blocking her way, their leader calling her by name, Bu Yunseal. You've been too cocky since the intermediate hall. It's time to break that habit, the leader said with disdain. And since you were the first to kill, don't complain about injustice. The 5 of us were already known as the Swords of the 5 Peaks before coming here. Geniuses among geniuses. With a malicious smile, the leader warned her. You better be prepared. Surrounded and outnumbered, Yunseal calmly faced her first survival test in the advanced hall, not from an instructor, but from her own peers. No, Yunseal corrected herself, realizing they were not 5 opponents. There's one more. Damn it, shouted the group's leader as one of his men lunged to attack the newcomer who had dared to interfere. But the attack was useless. In a single, brutal move, the newcomer knocked down his opponent, with one of theirs already on the ground. The rest of the group could only watch with a mix of anger and surprise. Seo Jinha, shouted the leader, recognizing the mysterious red-eyed woman who had ruined their ambush. Completely ignoring the thugs, the woman named Seo Jinha focused all her attention on Bu Yunseal. With an intensity matching her own, she spoke the only 3 words that mattered at that moment. We need to talk. The ambush by the 5 Peak swords had collapsed, replaced by an entirely new and unexpected confrontation. Now, the question wasn't whether Yunseal could survive the fight, but what this powerful and enigmatic woman wanted from him. The ambush by the 5 Peak swords is abruptly interrupted by an unexpected figure. One of the thugs falls defeated while their leader shouts in surprise, Seo Jinha, why are you here all of a sudden? With a cold glare and an overwhelming aura, the newcomer dismisses them and orders disdainfully, Get lost. I have no business with you minnows. Terror takes hold of the thugs, whose expressions of arrogance turn into pure fear at the imposing presence of the woman. Completely defeated, the cowards flee while throwing out an empty threat. TSK. You'll see. Meanwhile, Bu Yunseal observes the scene with her usual analytical calm, immediately recognizing the power of her savior. That woman. She's strong. In the ensuing silence, she delivers a single word, cowards, to which Yunseal simply replies, yes, creating a strange connection between them. But Yunseal's eyes also shine with an intense red, a sign that she is not a weakling needing protection, but a predator sizing up another. The mysterious woman's true intention is revealed when she addresses him by name, setting the stage for the real confrontation. I'll ask you directly, Bu Yunseal. With her weapon in hand and a piercing gaze, she throws him the crucial question that will define their relationship. Which side are you on? The question catches Yunseal by surprise, her face tensing as she processes the implications of an alliance in this hell where one can only trust oneself. The master of the advanced hall explains that true mastery of the sword does not lie in imitation, but in creation. You can only say you have truly mastered it when you have created your own sword form. And to begin the test, the first name to echo in the hall is that of the newcomer who has sown chaos and amazement, Bu Yunseal. With a calm that hides the storm within, the master gives a simple order, execute Hyan. Accepting the challenge, Yunseal stands up and draws his sword, ready to show everyone the true nature of his martial art. He closes his eyes for a moment, not to recall a form, but to summon the memory of his grandfather's killer, the only opponent in his mind. When his eyes open again, there is no trace of calm left. only a fury and murderous intent so intense it seems to light up the room. His body unleashes into a blur of speed and power, his silhouette wrapped in a dark aura as his sword cuts through the air with unheard-of violence. He becomes a whirlwind of destruction, unleashing a rain of deadly slashes that bear no resemblance to the elegant form he was supposed to perform. When he finally stops, the floor of the training hall is covered with countless scars, proof of the massacre he has just enacted. The master watches him silently, his face impassive, but his thoughts reveal the shocking truth. You have taken manhua, the most solemn and delicate of the sword forms, and turned it into something filled with murderous intent. After the striking demonstration, the master tells Yunseal, "You may return to your place," and prepares to call the next. All right, the next to be called is the enigmatic red-haired woman, the same who saved him and confronted him, Seo Jinha. As she walks toward the center, she passes by Yunseal, and a silent tension fills the air between the two prodigies. Seo Jinha's presence triggers a vivid memory in Yunseal's mind, transporting him back to their tense encounter in the forest. He remembers that moment perfectly, when her intention shifted and she drew her sword not to practice, but to attack. At that moment, Seo Jinha definitely. In his mind, he relives the clash of steel and realizes the truth. Launched a counterattack against me, instead of manhua. Her action wasn't a simple duel, but a clear and direct message, a show of power, as if she was warning me. The scene returns to his confused question in the forest, unable to understand the woman's strange demand. Which side am I on? What do you mean by that? Yunseal's apparent ignorance angers Seo Jinha, who yells at him in frustration, "Don't play dumb." Then she reveals the letter she had kept, a statement that strikes Yunseal directly in his deepest secret. "I know not everyone gathered here came because they want to become one of the 10 demon successors. Now that I think about it, although this is an incredible opportunity to learn the martial arts of the 10 demon sects, the participation process was ridiculously lax, a red flag that most of the candidates ignored in their ambition. In that case, this incredible opportunity is also a trap to catch someone." The shocking revelation leaves Yunseal speechless as she tries to grasp the new and dangerous reality she is being presented with. "You're saying that there is a spy?" Seo Jinha studies her reaction with a calculating gaze, and the genuine confusion on her face is enough to convince her. That expression and tone of voice are not a lie. Disappointed, she sheaths her sword, abandoning the confrontation she had initiated. "So it's not you. TSK, and I was hoping to have a little fun." Turning to leave, she gives a cold warning. "From now on, keep your head down in the training hall and behave." But before leaving, she throws one last chilling threat, making clear the danger she represents. "If you keep getting on my nerves, I'll annihilate you too." Yunseal is left alone, processing the shocking conversation and realizing her own naivety in this nest of vipers. A spy? There were many things I didn't know, and she understands the reason for her blindness. I suppose so, since I was putting everything I had into learning the martial arts of the Nanjia Pavilion and the Fire Rain Sword sect. After Seo Jinha's warning, Yunseal simplifies the complex situation with brutal, straightforward logic. "Well, there's no need to worry about that. Whether it's a spy or some other demon, they are all simply enemies I have to fight." As the sun sets over the Hell Domain, a feeling of foreboding spreads through the air, signaling the end of an era and the beginning of the true test. It's about to begin. In the darkness, a rat, a spy of the shadows, is mercilessly crushed, a violent omen that the hunt has begun and there will be no mercy for the weak. Back in the training hall, the instructor's hand slams the table with the same resolve, announcing the end of their tutelage. As of today, all training is complete. He begins his final speech, acknowledging his students' impatience. "I imagine many of you found studying martial principles tedious. However, he imparts one last crucial lesson about true mastery. This is because with martial arts, knowing is not the same as being able to do, and being able to do is not the same as knowing." He assures them that this knowledge, though tedious, will be their greatest weapon. "My interpretations of the principles I have taught you so far will be a great advantage for all of you as you continue your journey in the martial world." With a solemn gaze, the elderly master prepares to bid farewell to the generation of warriors he has trained. Well, Then, his last words to them are not an order, but a blessing for the bloody battles ahead. I wish you good fortune in your battles. But before they can absorb the farewell, a sudden sound breaks the silence, and panic grips the apprentices. The sound of a gong? What is happening? With a voice resonating with authority, the master announces the beginning of the end. The time has come. Go to the stone mountain at the center of the island immediately. All the candidates head toward the ominous stone mountain rising against the twilight sky, the setting for their final trial. There, gathered before the imposing figure of Chief Instructor Hyakrian, the true architect of this hell, the tension is almost unbearable. The instructor beside him confirms that all candidates are present, to which he responds with a simple and grave Among the crowd of elites, Yunseal watches silently, his calm face hiding the experience of the true second test that only he and a few others know. The chief instructor begins his announcement with a dramatic pause, savoring the moment. Now, from this moment on, with his eyes shining with a reddish light and a cruel smile, he declares the start of the next phase. The third gate will begin. Confusion spreads among the candidates who passed the first test, as they wonder, the third test? Not the second. But in Yunseal's mind, there is no doubt. Recalling the massacre she survived, I don't know about the others, but the life-or-death fight I went through, that was the second test. The instructor then clarifies the brutal rules. Soon, all the caves will be sealed. After that, until the 10 candidates are chosen, you will not be able to return to your quarters. So prepare whatever you need in advance. Panic and disbelief take hold of the candidates as they murmur among themselves, unable to process the cruelty of the final test. One of them, with a trembling voice, dares to ask what everyone is thinking. How exactly are the 10 candidates going to be selected for this to be required? The chief instructor mocks their naivety with absolute disdain. I mean, fools of the demonic path, so incredibly dense. Then, with a sweeping gesture, he gives them the simple and brutal answer that defines their path. Kill each other. With a piercing gaze and his eye glowing with a crimson light, he reiterates the only rule of this massacre. Until the 10 candidates are chosen, you must kill each other. Understood. Horror appears on the faces of almost everyone, except for one candidate who smiles smugly, as if he had been waiting for this bloodbath his entire life. The instructor warns them that cowardice is not a viable option. If you hide in the shadows, if you flee without fighting, that is your choice. But it won't last. He then reveals the mechanism that will force the confrontation. As time passes, the areas where you can remain will be restricted, and those who stay in the restricted areas, with the image of deadly specters filling the air, he concludes his threat, will be slaughtered by these killer ghosts. Even from a distance, Yunseal's sharpened senses can already perceive the overwhelming power of these new threats. That murderous aura reaches all the way here. Even the talented Seo Jinha can feel the immense pressure emanating from the test enforcers. They are clearly masters of an incredible skill. An aspirant, voice full of fear, asks what everyone dreads to know. Are we not allowed to attack those killer ghosts? The chief instructor bursts into a manic laugh at his question. Huh? If you're candidates for the top 10, you'd better be able to handle at least this. Then, he presents them with a high-risk, high-reward option. Of course you can attack them and fight them. If you are strong enough, it is allowed to kill them. And with a malicious smile, he reveals the ultimate shortcut to victory. If someone kills a killer ghost, that person will immediately become one of the 10. Absolute terror grips the apprentices as they realize the truth. So it's harder to take down a single killer ghost than for all of us to be massacred here. Meanwhile, the instructor clarifies that there are no rules of honor in this test. Remember this. You can roam in groups or set ambushes, it doesn't matter. With a clenched fist, he sums up the brutal philosophy of the final test. As long as you don't die, anything is necessary. That's how you become one of the candidates. The moment the test begins, Yunseal wastes no time and bolts, determined to take the initiative. I need to move quickly. Her strategy is clear, as revealed by her thoughts. I've already drawn too much attention from the other apprentices, and her only option is to separate from the group to avoid becoming everyone's first target. Her strategist mind analyzes the immediate danger. If I don't get out of here at once, I could end up besieged again by those who distrust me, just like last time. With a clear objective in mind, she sets her first move in this deadly game. First, I will head to a safe place. The safest place for me would, of course, be that one. Her destination is none other than the humble and secluded Nanjia Pavilion, the place where she honed her new senses and her first real weapon in this hell. But upon arrival, she stops dead in her tracks, her body reacting to an anomaly imperceptible to others. His sharp senses, honed in the dark, alert him to a change in the environment. The ground feels different than before. Upon touching the earth, his suspicions are confirmed. The ground has been recently disturbed, a clear sign of an ambush. His eyes narrow with deadly calm, understanding that he has been led straight into a trap. His beast perception activates, detecting movement in the forest and confirming the presence of enemies. Someone is coming. Suddenly, the bait of the plan appears, an apprentice running desperately towards him and shouting, "Please, save me. Those bastards trying to kill me are chasing me." Unfazed by the chaotic scene, Yunseal remains still, hand on the hilt of his sword, coldly waiting for the hunters to reveal themselves. The apprentice, used as bait, continues pleading, "If you help me, I'll make sure to pay you," while Yunseal coldly evaluates whether it's a trick or not. His sharp funerary eye allows him to see the truth in the situation. The wounds are real, he concludes, realizing the danger to the boy is genuine. With his beast perception, he analyzes the approaching threat, identifying the attackers. 3 pursuers in total. They've teamed up. He weighs his options and reaches a pragmatic conclusion. I don't want to get involved, but it would be problematic if my position were exposed because of this guy. Faced with the young man's desperate look as he waits for an answer, Yunseal makes a decision. Without a word, she grabs the apprentice by the neck and drags him along, choosing direct action over indifference. With surprising strength, she forces her way through a thick thicket, creating an escape route where there was none. The pursuers arrive at the spot only to find it empty. Where did they go? They ask, unaware that their prey is hiding just beneath them. The group leader, furious at having been outwitted, swears revenge. "That bastard. I'll kill him myself, no matter what." Move. From her hiding place, Yunseal calmly watches as her enemies move away, having successfully avoided the first trap of this deadly hunt. After the escape, Yunseal emerges from her hiding spot, revealing that it was not just a simple pit, but an underground tunnel. With one last effort, she pulls out the apprentice who had been used as bait, who breathes in relief, finally safe from his pursuers. Overwhelmed with gratitude, the young man repeatedly bows to his savior. "You saved me. Thank you." But Yunseal's mind is elsewhere, uncovering the truth behind her refuge. "That hole isn't just to hide my body. Just as I thought, the Elder Sao prepared this for me." Inside the tunnel, his connection to the earth revealed a new dimension of his power. "When I was inside the earth, I felt the senses of the beast paths expanding even further." He could perceive with astonishing clarity every detail of the outside world, like the sound of feet hitting the ground. He could even hear the movement of his weapons, the sound of fencing unfolding. He then understood the true power of his senses. Through the vibrations, the situation reaches me as vividly as if I could see it. And with that revelation came the epiphany about his master's true lesson. Beast paths using vibrations. This must be what he wanted to teach me. Back in the present, despite having saved his life, Yunseal's gaze toward the other apprentice remains cautious, reminding us that in this hell, an ally today can be an enemy tomorrow. After a moment of analysis, Yunseal's expression hardens, having made a decision about his new and unwanted companion. Breaking the tense silence, the young man he just saved begins to speak. "Oh, right." With a nervous smile, he tries to forge a bond by formally introducing himself. "I'm GM Keeliang from the Blood Sect. May I ask your name too?" Yunseal's response is to turn his back and start walking, but Keeliang hurriedly follows, awkwardly saying, So, let's go together." Trying to justify his weakness, Keeliang recounts his terrifying experience. "When the third trial began, I ran straight into the forest, but everyone kept attacking and chasing me relentlessly. It was terrifying." Then, he makes his request, seeking the protection of the man who saved him. "If you don't mind, may I travel with you? I feel like I can trust you." Yunseal continues on his path in impenetrable silence, neither accepting nor rejecting the proposal. Taking his silence as consent, Keeliang joins him with forced enthusiasm. "I'll take that as your agreement." But then, Heliong's facade cracks, and a strange and unsettling smile spreads across his face, revealing a hidden darkness that chills the blood. The journey continues toward the rugged peaks, but now the danger to Yunseal lies not only in the other competitors, but in the man with the deranged smile walking beside him. As they advance, Yunseal uses his incredible sensory ability, placing his hand on the ground to read the battlefield's vibrations. He detects a nearby conflict and decides to change course. There's a battle happening right ahead. I'll have to find another path. While Heliong looks at him in astonishment. Meanwhile, the sole survivor of the group hunting them stands over the bodies of his comrades, his pursuit now driven by something more than mere rivalry. With a determination forged in loss, he makes a blood oath. Even if I have to sell my soul, I will avenge my fallen brothers. His sole purpose now boils down to one word, a feeling that consumes him completely: revenge. This oath evokes images of his fallen comrades, whose deaths now weigh heavily on his shoulders. In the distance, the hunter's powerful murderous intent reaches Yunseal, who abruptly stops upon recognizing it as a familiar feeling of hatred. Driven by that well-known emotion, he changes course and heads toward the danger. The plan has changed. I am joining that fight. The hunter, now turned prey, waits in a tree branch, unaware that Yunseal and Heliong watch him from below. But the confrontation is inevitable, and the pursuer launches a preemptive attack from above, initiating the battle between two souls consumed by vengeance. The fight begins with the clash of steel when a hidden assassin lunges at Yunseal, only to be met with a perfect parry. The assassin is stunned by the incredible feat. How did you block my ultimate assassination technique? The forbidden extreme invisibility art? Are you an assassin too? But Yunseal gives him no time to process his failure, immediately shifting from defense to a fluid and deadly counterattack. His sword, imbued with a reddish energy, cuts through the air with a murderous intent that matches and surpasses that of his opponent. As the assassin's body falls to the ground, Yunseal coldly analyzes the enemy's technique, the skill of an assassin who conceals their presence, and he reflects on his own unique advantage, recognizing the power that gave him victory. If it weren't for my beast path, this would have been quite troublesome. Safe at a distance, Heliong shudders at the violence. Ugh, the blood, they're still fighting. Yunseal's attention, however, is fixed on the epicenter of the battle, a lone warrior bravely fighting against four assassins. Seeing this solitary man's fight, Yunseal's eyes flash with an intense red, and a dangerous idea begins to form in his mind. If I help him deal with these assassins, he wonders if, by participating in another man's revenge, he might experience a fraction of the catharsis he himself longs for. Will I be able to feel the satisfaction of completing my revenge? Consumed by hatred, the lone warrior prepares for his final battle, his voice filled with grim determination. It's over. Let's hurry and finish this. The assassins, confident in their victory, offer him a swift death as a twisted sign of respect. Huh? As a sign of respect, I'll make your end quick. But just when the battle seemed decided, a new sword enters the fray, blocking a deadly blow and changing the course of fate. The sudden appearance of Yunseal takes the assassins by surprise, who shout in confusion. Who is this guy? Were there more? With a cold humph, Yunseal faces his new opponents, his red eye shining with a terrifying calm that promises a swift death. Emboldened by his new ally, the vengeful warrior focuses his attention on a single enemy, his target now within reach. I just need to kill you. The tide of the battle begins to tilt, and one of the assassins falls wounded, cursing the man who refused to die. Ugh. This bastard. Yunseal dives into the heart of the battle, moving with lethal grace and facing multiple enemies at once. The lone warrior fights with renewed vigor, his body pushed to the limit, but his spirit of vengeance now burning stronger than ever. In an instant, another assassin falls with a slashed throat, a death so swift and silent that his companions can only watch in horror, witnesses to Yunseal's ghostly skill. The battle turns into a whirlwind of steel and blood, with the vengeful warrior and Yunseal fighting like two forces of nature against the remaining assassins. In a desperate scream, the last assassin charges forward, shouting "Die!" only to be met by his opponent's somersault. Meanwhile, Yunseal, her face splattered with blood, watches the massacre with a vacant gaze, a spectator to another man's revenge climax. In a final and brutal move, the lone warrior pierces his last enemy's head, ending his hunt. His sword does not stop, cutting down another opponent in a blur of fury and steel. Covered in his enemy's blood, the man finally breaks, and a mad laugh bursts from his throat. Huh. Huh. He falls to his knees, exhausted and wounded but satisfied, whispering the words he longed to say. My revenge. I have achieved it. Calm descends on the clearing, now a silent graveyard where Yunseal stands among the fallen, the only impassive witness to the bloody conclusion. Once the danger has passed, Heiliang timidly emerges from his hiding place, asking, "Is it all over now?" He approaches the scene, praises Yunseal's incredible skill, but ends his sentence with an ominous but, hinting that he has noticed something unsettling in the victorious yet now empty warrior. But Heiliang's face twists into a mad smile, and out of nowhere, he pulls a dagger to stab Yunseal in the back. Still, you can't let your guard down. In a flash of red, the traitor lunges to deliver a fatal blow. However, the attack is blocked by Yunseal's steel, who turns to face his aggressor with chilling calm. The shock paralyzes Heiliang, who cannot understand how his perfect ambush failed. How? It's your fault, Yunseal says as he launches his own counterattack, taking full control of the situation. Angrily, he reproaches the assassin. Because of you, I couldn't ask that guy one last question, while a baffled Heiliang shouts, "When did you realize?" Yunseal's answer is as simple as it is devastating, completely breaking the assassin's composure. From the beginning, Yunseal explains how he discovered his secret, revealing that when he pulled him out of the tunnel, "I knew you had a body full of hidden weapons. Seeing the stiff movement of your spine, as if you were carrying something at your waist, it wasn't hard to figure out," he adds, proving that his funeral director's eyes miss nothing. Finally, he reveals the cold and calculated reason he kept an assassin by his side. "The only reason I kept you close was simply because I was curious about your methods, watching the ways of those who try to deceive others. I thought it would be quite useful for future fights." Unable to accept being fooled so easily, Heiliang grits his teeth in rage and denies reality. That can't be. In a final act of desperation, he throws a hail of daggers while shouting, convinced of his own cleverness. "My performance was perfect." Yunseal's face, now stained with blood, shows no surprise, only absolute concentration as she prepares to nullify the attack. But Heiliang had also made a crucial observation about his opponent. "I felt it while following that guy, but just as I thought." The assassin had reached a terrifying conclusion about the true nature of Yunseal's power. Is she capable of predicting movements? And his theory is confirmed in the most spectacular way when Yunseal moves through the rain of steel, deflecting each dagger as if she knew its trajectory beforehand. In an instant, the distance between them closes and Yunseal delivers a deadly blow, ending the battle with inhuman speed and precision. As Heiliang staggers toward his death, Yunseal begins her final lesson. Cook. No matter how good your hidden weapons are. Holding one of the captured daggers, she delivers the verbal coup de grace to the defeated assassin. They're useless if you've been discovered, right? Defeated, the assassin can only grunt in pain and frustration, completely at the mercy of his opponent. From the ground, Heiliang looks up at Yunseal's figure, who stands over him not as a savior, but as an executioner. Yunseal's face, splattered with blood, remains impassive, her eyes cold and empty as she prepares to pronounce judgment. Like a shadow of death, she positions herself for the final strike, showing not a trace of doubt or mercy. And the end comes, not with a sword cut, but with one of the assassin's own daggers, thrown with deadly precision straight into his eye. Yunseal stands over her enemy's corpse, wiping the blood from her sword with a chilling and barely perceptible smile of satisfaction. In her mind, she analyzes the fight, recognizing the danger she faced. It was not an easy fight. If I hadn't realized he was hiding his memorized techniques, it would have been dangerous. His face, stained with crimson, belongs to a man who is growing too accustomed to the killing. Heiliang's lifeless body lies on the ground, his complex web of deceit and betrayal undone by a single man, a life fading away. The first traitor has fallen, his pierced eye a silent testament to Yunseal's lethal intelligence. As she watches the kneeling warrior, Yunseal recognizes in him a kindred spirit, a survivor. As always, his face is filled with an obsession for life. She decides to leave the bloody scene, having fulfilled her goal of witnessing another's vengeance. But his funerary instincts stop him, and he kneels beside one of the corpses, noticing a detail that others would overlook. This one is different. The battle, an explosion of hatred and steel, has ended, but its echoes remain. Looking at the man who has completed his objective, Yunseal sinks into deep reflection about his own path. Once the revenge is complete, will I be able to smile so freely as well? A faint and melancholic smile forms on his bloodied face, the smile of a man who fears that the end of his journey will bring him only emptiness. After his examination, he takes the fallen assassin's sword, a new thread to pull in his investigation. With a new weapon and a new lead, Yunseal runs into the darkness, his purpose renewed. But he is not alone. In the shadows, a new threat watches him, while hidden weapons whistle through the air. Is it him? Using the basic techniques of the Firestorm Sword Hall to take down elite assassins is a feat only a genius could achieve, and the name of that genius is Yunseal. Meanwhile, from the shadows, an unknown observer evaluates Yunseal's performance with analytical coldness. A remarkable talent. But there are many prodigies like him here. His judgment is unrelenting, and his prognosis for the young man is grim. Unless he reaches a higher level, surviving in hell will be difficult. The next day, the relentless hunt has taken its toll on Yunseal, who runs breathlessly, without a moment's rest. A new group of hunters has found him, and their leader shouts confidently, spotting an easy target. He's alone. Don't let him escape. The pursuers attack in a coordinated formation, using chain whips to restrict his movements and corner him. Yunseal defends himself with incredible skill, deflecting the attacks with his sword in a whirlwind of steel. The speed of the combat is frantic, a constant clash of weapons filling the air. But despite his prowess, the enemy's numerical superiority prevails, and a whip strikes him brutally across the back. With pain coursing through his body, despair begins to creep into his mind. If I keep handling him like this, I'll die in vain. Surrounded and outnumbered, Yunseal realizes that mere skill won't be enough to survive, and that he needs a new strategy. I need to come up with a plan. From above, the architects of the trial watch the progress of the massacre. What is the situation? Asks the chief instructor, to which his assistant replies, out of 86 apprentices, 41 remain alive. The instructor seems disappointed by the slow pace of the slaughter, like an emperor bored with his gladiators. Even after 3 days, only 41. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, Yunseal's struggle for survival is relentless and brutal, each second a new hurdle, each moment a new wound. But a cruel smile spreads across the instructor's face, pleased that the crucible of death has left only the strongest. It's time to reveal their abilities. With a new phase of the test in mind, he asks his assistant for the tool for his next move. Give me the map. Back in the fight, Yunseal's luck seems to run out when one of his pursuers manages to catch his swords with a flexible weapon. Caught. His 2 swords are immobilized, leaving him momentarily defenseless before the group of hunters. But instead of panicking, Yunseal opts for a tactical retreat, dropping his weapons and running, to the frustration of his enemies. He's running away again. His strategist mind has already analyzed the situation and found the weakness in his own position. Given the characteristics of their weapons, fighting in an open space is a disadvantage. With a new plan forming in his mind, he doesn't flee aimlessly but runs toward a terrain suited to his fighting style. So, first, the squad leader, sensing danger, shouts a warning to his companion. Behind you, idiot. Yunseal mocks, believing he has avoided the attack. Did you really think such a superficial trick would work? But Yunseal lands calmly, her expression focused. The real battle is just beginning. She moves with ghostly speed, her body swaying as she dodges the coordinated attacks of the squad. Their swords clash in a flash of fury, a deadly dance in the narrow corridors. The leader's arrogance turns to shock when Yunseal's sword pierces his guard. And then, he reaches a terrible conclusion. Is this guy reading the White Horse Squad's route? His worst fear is confirmed as Yunseal slips through a combined attack from 3 men without a single scratch. She begins to dismantle their teamwork, knocking down one member to the horrified gaze of his comrade. Damn it, the leader shouts as he watches his squad annihilated, now with the white-eyed demon charging straight toward him. From his elevated position, the chief instructor manipulates the battlefield, pointing to a new zone on the map and declaring, We will restrict this area. Yinseal's face fills with fierce determination. She knows that time and space are running out, and that she must act. But the instructor has one more ace up his sleeve, issuing a new and sinister order. Release the assassins of the deadly secret in the Hall of the Stormfire Sword. The island's most popular spot is about to become a grave. Unaware of the new threat, or perhaps drawn to it, Yinseal's fate leads him precisely to that place. The Great Hall of the Sword of the Firestorm. His pursuers follow his trail of blood to the entrance, confirming that their prey is near. The squad enters the silent building, ready to begin the hunt. They split up to search for him, mocking their target. Is he hiding in here? Huh. The trapped rat seems desperate. The group leader gloats, shouting into the shadows. No matter how far you run, you cannot escape our White Horse squad. Unaware that death watches him from behind. But his arrogance vanishes in an instant, replaced by pure terror as he finally senses the overwhelming murderous intent of the rat he thought he had cornered. In the narrow hallways of the hall, one of the pursuers strikes with his whip, confident in its reach. But his expression turns to terror as he realizes his mistake. This place is too narrow for his weapon. With a predatory smile, Yinseal takes advantage of the tactical edge, closing the distance to deliver a killing blow. The man's scream echoes down the hallway as Yinseal's silhouette ruthlessly knocks him down, the first pawn in his strategy to fall. Another squad member watches in horror as his comrade is slaughtered, unable to comprehend the sudden reversal of roles. This guy. Finally, the squad leader grasps the terrible truth. They weren't hunting a rat. They were being led into a trap. He deliberately lured us here. Yinseal's mind reveals her cold calculation. Fighting in a narrow space reduces their power and makes their techniques easy to predict. Besides, they aren't particularly skilled, and the result of her brilliant strategy is a hallway full of corpses, proof of her conclusion. If I face them one by one, victory is possible. The remaining survivors, consumed by rage and despair, launch a final suicidal charge, screaming, "Yawa!" The battle culminates in a dazzling flash of steel, the final clash that will determine the fate of the White Horse squad. In the final desperate charge, one of the pursuers leaps to attack Yinseal. His flexible whip, useless in the narrow corridor, strikes the wall with a sharp crack. The weapon's rebound throws him off balance, a fatal mistake in a duel to the death. Oh no, the whip bounced off the wall. Seeing the opportunity, the other squad members decide to flee. Now's our chance. Let's get out of here. But as one tries to escape, he is violently grabbed by the hair and stopped dead in his tracks. To his surprise, it is not Yinseal who has caught him, but his own leader. The leader's silhouette looms like a demon in the doorway, his voice dripping with threat. "What are you doing?" With cold fury, he makes it clear that retreat is not an option. "You're not planning to run away, are you?" Terrified, the subordinate tries to excuse his cowardice. Leader. "It's not that. It's just that this doesn't seem like a good place to fight." The leader's response to this insubordination is a flash of brutal violence, a bloody punishment to restore discipline. His reaction to cowardice is a massacre, and in an instant, the hallway fills with the blood of his own men. With absolute disdain, the man, Womanchong, steps over the bodies of his subordinates. "TSK. I guess I shouldn't have brought these losers." From the shadows, Yinseal has witnessed the entire slaughter, assessing the true monster of this squad. Finally, she emerges from her hiding place to confront the sole survivor, who asks her, "Are you their leader?" The killer smiles, acknowledging the skill of his new opponent. "Your skill is quite impressive. The sword technique you used before, was it the fire rain sword?" With chilling formality, he introduces himself amid the bloody scene. "My name is Womanchong." "What's your name?" The scene is macabre, a man standing over the corpses of his allies, facing another surrounded by the bodies of his enemies. Yinseal looks at him, finally understanding the nature of the man before him. "So you are." But Womanchong laughs loudly, dismissing formalities in the face of certain death. What use is the name of someone who will soon die? I don't need to know it," he shouts, launching into the attack and starting the real duel. The duel intensifies, and Yinseal is surprised by his opponent's strange weapon. Is that a? With a single strike, Yinseal's blade shatters, unable to withstand the brute strength of Womanchong. The leader mocks his skill, showing knowledge of his background. "I heard that in the advanced class they only taught you the defensive style." But instead of panicking, Yunseal counterattacks with a weapon sharper than steel, a cryptic question. Do you know about the deep earth and the high sky? The question strikes Woomanchong like lightning, filling him with surprise and suspicion. How does he know that? Does he have some kind of information network I'm unaware of? Enraged by the mind game, the leader explodes. What are you thinking about during a fight? He presses his attack with renewed confidence, believing brute force is all he needs. His blows are so powerful that they tear through the walls and floor, turning the corridor into a zone of destruction. Yunseal, dodging the debris, analyzes her opponent's style. He destroys everything he touches, whether it's a wall or the ceiling. And she reaches a new tactical conclusion. There is no advantage in fighting someone like this in a confined space. In an unexpected move, Yunseal abandons fencing and strikes her opponent directly, a dirty but effective tactic. Taking advantage of the brief opening, she retrieves one of her fallen swords, refusing to be disarmed. Her face, stained with blood, shows unwavering determination. The fight is far from over. Woomanchong recovers, disappointed by his opponent's tactic. How disappointing. He mocks Yunseal's skill, boasting about the superiority of his own art. You can't face the style of the 9 tails of the white horse with such a terrible sword technique. His weapon strikes again, and for the second time, Yunseal's sword shatters. Woomanchong unleashes his ultimate technique, a whirlwind of flexible attacks filling the corridor. Yunseal finds herself in the eye of the storm, struggling to defend against blows coming from all directions. The attack intensifies, forming a steel cage from which there seems to be no escape. With her prey completely trapped, Woomanchong laughs heartily, savoring his impending victory. The white horse's whip will soon take your life. Trapped in the steel cage, Yunseal unleashes a new technique, a flash of pure light emanating from her body. Her mind analyzes the situation with absolute clarity. She knows her defensive style can block attacks, but it lacks the power to break her opponent's whip. She closes her eyes, searching within for a different answer, a new solution. In that case, what I need right now is... In her mind, she recalls a crucial lesson from her master, a hidden principle in the defensive art that she is about to unleash. Understanding lights up her gaze, and the true power of the technique is revealed. Woomanchong watches the sphere of light with confusion, unable to comprehend what is happening. He mocks what he perceives as a last act of desperation. Haha, are you trying one final desperate fight? Still confident in his victory, he believes Yunseal's technique is useless, unaware that he is about to witness its true form. But his arrogance turns into pure shock as the defensive sphere crackles with overwhelming, offensive energy. In a cataclysmic explosion of light, perfect defense becomes perfect offense, shattering the whip cage and sending Woomanchong flying. At the heart of the explosion, Yunseal's silhouette emerges, not as a victim, but as a slaughter demon. The technique, a legacy from her second master, descends with elemental fury, thundering lightning. Yunseal's figure rises above his fallen opponent, surrounded by the crackling energy of his overwhelming power. Woomanchong, defeated and humiliated, can barely articulate his disbelief. What the hell? The power of the attack has left a permanent scar on the hall, a testament to the destructive force that Yunseal now commands. His face, wounded and stained with blood, is that of a man who has wagered everything on a single, devastating move. The arrogant Woomanchong lies dead on the ground, his neck cleanly cut, his reign of terror ended. Yunseal allows himself a sigh of exhaustion, the weight of the battle finally settling on his shoulders. He recalls the words of his instructor, recognizing the nature of the technique that gave him victory. Thunder lightning. It's a deadly sword with incredible power. But victory comes at a cost, and as Yunseal coughs and clutches his mouth, we realize that using such great power is causing terrible harm to his own body. As blood drips from his hand, Yunseal reflects on the price of his power. It will be difficult for me to use it freely at my current level. He knows he cannot afford to rest, as the battlefield is constantly changing. The restricted area will shift soon, so I have to move. With his face stained with blood, he prepares to leave the bloody scene and continue on his path. But just as he turns around, his beast senses flare, alerting him to a new and terrifying presence. In the reflection of his eye, he sees a figure that shouldn't be there, and his mind refuses to accept it. This can't be. Standing at the entrance is one of the reapers of the trial, an executor from hell. Why is that guy here? The massacre demon. The pressure emanating from this single being is overwhelming, a threat on a completely different level from what he just faced. Yunseal immediately understands the terrible truth. Did this place become a restricted zone while we were fighting? But despite the mortal danger, his determination does not waver, reminding himself, I didn't come here just to run from the battle. Spotting a clue among the rubble, a new and bold strategy forms in his mind, a plan that uses the demon itself as a key piece. The massacre demon stands like a silent guardian, a deadly barrier between Yunseal and the exit. Yunseal quickly deduces its behavior. All right, no response. Then that must mean I should leave immediately. Confirming that it only attacks those who remain in the zone. With blood still on his face, his strategist mind processes the rules of this new and deadly game. But just as he prepares to move, a giant snake made of pure energy materializes and attacks the demon, revealing the presence of another powerful player. Surprise appears on Yunseal's face. He is not the only one who has decided to face the dangers of the room. The cobra's attack strikes the demon in a flash of light, a blow that should have been devastating. However, the demon responds with a sword slash so fast it seems to defy the laws of physics. His speed is otherworldly, a movement so swift it is impossible to perceive. I didn't feel the sword strike being launched. Witnessing this incredible feat, Yunseal realizes how close he himself was to death. Without the beast path, I surely would be dead. The battle has begun between the mysterious new contender and the monstrous guardian, a clash of titans that promises to destroy everything around them. The duel of gazes between Yunseal and the massacre demon intensifies, a battle of wills before a single blow is exchanged. Even the demon, a killing machine, recognizes his opponent's skill. I must not be fooled by that calm attitude. The moment I move, he will strike there first. In his mind, Yunseal recalls a lesson from an old master about hunting. Carnivores are faster, but herbivores aren't easily caught. Do you know why? A young Yunseal answers. Isn't it because most herbivores move in a zigzag pattern? His teacher explains that this is only half the answer. The true predators have a secret. They synchronize their attacks to match the fleeing prey's movements. The teacher reveals, showing the key to countering evasive movement. The teacher's question echoes in his memory. So, what should you do? The lesson finally makes sense in the present, and a new and bold strategy forms in Yunseal's mind. In that case, suddenly, he breaks the silence with a wild, primal yell, an act designed to break his opponent's concentration. And with that distraction, he lunges forward, applying his teacher's lesson in the only way possible. I have to make my moves completely unpredictable. Intrigued by Yunseal's strange tactic, the massacre demon watches him with a curiosity uncharacteristic of a being of his nature. Yunseal begins his deadly dance, executing the first part of his plan. First, predictable zigzag movement, to lure the demon into an attack pattern. Just as predicted, the demon moves to intercept him, its superior predator instinct falling right into the trap. The second phase of the plan is a deception, a feint designed to cement the demon's confidence in its predictions. And finally, the third and last part, creating an opening with unpredictable movement. The demon raises his sword, ready to deliver the final blow at the exact spot where he expects Yunseal to appear. But the demon's speed exceeds all his calculations, and terror seizes Yunseal as he sees the blade already at his neck. Damn it, too late. Death brushes past him, a drop of blood the only testament to how close he was to the end. Confused, he realizes that the demon has stopped, and the incredible truth hits him. In his last desperate move, he crossed the boundary line of the restricted zone. It was not skill nor strategy that saved him, but a game rule, a narrow escape from the jaws of death. Fleeing to save his life, Yunseal faces a harsh truth about his own power. In the end, all I managed to do was run with all my might. I never created even the slightest opening when facing him. The overwhelming difference in power strikes him with devastating force, making him question all his progress. That is a true master. Was I nothing more than a frog at the bottom of a well? Far from immediate danger, he finally has a moment to process the terrifying reality of the power he has just witnessed. The skill of true masters is really on another level. He thinks, his understanding of the martial world expanding toward a new and terrifying horizon. And this new understanding leads him to an even darker conclusion about his grandfather's killer. He realizes that his true enemy is a monster of the same caliber as the massacre demon, and that to take revenge, I must surpass that realm. But his reflection is interrupted by the sudden appearance of a new contender who calls him by name. Are you Bu Gaunseal? The mysterious young man reveals the reason for his search. I have been looking for you for a long time. I've heard that you have trained on the beast path. Caution grips Yunseal, who suspects it is another trap. You speak as if you know me. Did you share information with others? However, in a completely unexpected twist, the newcomer kneels and rests his sword on the ground, a gesture not of hostility, but of supplication. Yunseal rejects the strange plea with a cold death sentence. No, there is no need for someone about to die to know my name. Accepting the challenge, the newcomer launches into attack with a war cry. Here I go. Their swords clash in an instant. A meeting of two masters of a completely different caliber than the previous thugs. Yunseal stands firm, his sword shining with a defensive light as he blocks the powerful initial attack. Impressed, his opponent acknowledges Yunseal's unique skill. Huh, impressive. With beast-like instincts, you predicted the trajectory of my sword ahead of time. Convinced of his power, the young warrior declares. As expected, you are sure to become one of the 10 candidates, and it is precisely for that reason that his mission changes. In that case, I will cut the seed of the demonic sect right here. Yunseal defends against the new and fierce assault, confused by the strange title given to him. But, seed of the demonic sect, the phrase triggers a memory of Seo Jinha's warning, and the pieces of the puzzle begin to fall into place. A terrible suspicion crosses Yunseal's mind as he looks at his opponent, a revelation about his true identity and purpose. This man, could he be struggling for his life? Yunseal tries to focus, setting aside his opponent's confusing revelations. I must put distractions aside. But as their weapons clash, a strange sensation runs through his body, a familiar feeling he can't place. Wait, this feeling. The feeling intensifies with every move, an unnatural force pulling him. He finally identifies it, an energy drawing him and his sword. This strange suction power. This sensation triggers a buried memory, a lesson from his childhood alongside his grandfather. In memory, her grandfather teaches her to read the secrets of the dead, identifying the wound of a corpse. This man has been struck by the Oho Danmun sword of the Peng clan from Hebei. No external wounds, but all the bones in the body are broken, he explains. That is the mark of the Oho Danmun sword. Memory and reality clash in her mind, and with renewed fury, Yunseal finally identifies her enemy's lineage. Oho Danmun sword. So, the Peng clan of Hebei. The young man from the Peng clan looks at her, astonished that his secret art has been recognized. But Yunseal reveals the full extent of her knowledge, quoting her grandfather's lesson. What? How do you know that? Her opponent shouts, to which Yunseal replies. Another mark of the Oho Danmun sword is its powerful absorption technique. The grandfather's lesson continues from the past, explaining the nature of the Peng clan's absorption technique. Its purpose in combat is clear and lethal. By using that with every move, it interferes with the opponent's weapon. Their form breaks, and then, in their panic, they are devoured, he explains, comparing the clan's style to a tiger hunting its prey. But young Yunseal learns the crucial weakness of the technique. It is a double-edged sword that can also harm oneself, as it dangerously brings the enemy too close. Back in the present, this forgotten lesson becomes the key to victory for Yunseal. Instead of resisting the absorbing force, he decides to use it to his advantage, lunging directly at his opponent. I will guide my sword toward the enemy. His charge is a bold all-or-nothing move, a gamble to turn his enemy's greatest strength into his downfall. Accepting the challenge, his opponent finally reveals his identity. I am Peng AK of Hebei. With his name and mission declared, Peng AK shouts his oath. In the name of the Peng clan of Hebei, I will wipe out the seeds of the demonic sect. Their swords finally meet in a decisive clash, a close-range battle where the absorption technique is no longer an advantage, but a deadly risk. Yunseal's tactic leaves his opponent completely stunned. What? Did he plant his sword into the ground? Believing it to be a rookie mistake, Peng AK lunges from the air to deliver the finishing blow. His sword descends in a blur of deadly energy, an attack impossible to dodge. But at the last moment, Yunseal steps aside and counters with a kick, breaking his opponent's balance and proving it was all part of his plan. With the opening he's created, he recovers his sword, his position in the battle now completely reversed. A crazed smile spreads across his face as he confirms his theory. It works. Enraged at having been tricked, Peng Ak insults him. Demonic beast, trying some petty tricks. Yunseal, however, is already analyzing the outcome, noting her opponent's incredible resilience, but without losing confidence. She knows the physical damage was minor, but the tactical victory is undeniable. Nevertheless, I have definitely found a way to counter it. And the key to her strategy is a lesson from her master. The late strike technique, the art of being a fraction of a second faster at the precise moment of impact. With her new strategy clear, Yunseal reveals the secret to defeating the Peng clan. By reversing the absorption technique, the sword technique can be executed faster than the sword's own trajectory. Peng Ak rises, unaware that his opponent has not only deciphered his technique, but is about to turn it against him. Without resisting the attracting force, Yunseal thinks, allowing her enemy's power to guide her movement. When Peng Ak attacks, Yunseal does not fight the vortex, but lets herself be carried by it, flowing with her opponent's strength. Taking advantage of the momentum, she places her sword in the perfect position for the counterattack. And in the final fraction of a second, she redirects all the accumulated energy, changing the direction of her blade for an unstoppable strike. The attack, accelerated by Peng Ak's own power, strikes with devastating force and speed. The prodigy of the Peng clan can barely react, his face contorted with pain and effort. Thrown backward, his mind struggles to comprehend what just happened. Could he really be using the absorption technique? And then, the incredible truth hits him. His opponent has not only countered his secret technique, but has mastered it at a level even the great masters would consider impossible. Unable to accept his defeat, Peng Ak launches himself at the attack once more, shouting furiously. There's no way a child could achieve that. Again, but Yunseal is ready, her body at the center of a vortex of energy, prepared to repeat her feat. Her strategy is simple yet brilliant. It's useless. The stronger the absorption technique is, the faster my sword becomes, she concludes, turning her enemy's power into her own weapon. The result is the same, and Yunseal's blade, propelled by Peng Ak's strength, strikes true once again. Humiliated and injured again, Peng Ak screams out in frustration. How long do you think that pathetic trick will work? But just as Yunseal prepares for the next counterattack, she notices a fatal change. The absorption technique has disappeared. Peng Ak, proving to be smarter than he seemed, has abandoned his technique and now relies on his own strength. TCH, you're strong enough even without the absorption technique. With Yunseal's strategy now useless, Peng Ak charges in for one final, direct attack. Take this. His face, contorted with fury, is that of a man who has bet everything on this final and devastating strike. But instead of panic, Yunseal's eyes show a predatory calm. Her opponent has fallen into her final trap. I've been waiting. She unleashes the technique she has been preparing, the first move of the Firestorm Sword Hall. Channeling all her power, she summons the deep mystic sword technique. To Peng Ak, it is as if a demon of blood and steel is lunging at him. Their attacks clash in an explosion of crimson energy, an impact that shakes the very foundations of the hall. Both warriors put every ounce of their being into this final clash, a collision of two indomitable wills. Even in this critical moment, a confident smile appears on Peng Ak's face, sure of his victory. But it is Yunseal's sword that finds its way through the storm, delivering a clean and deep strike. Shock and disbelief replace the arrogance on Peng Ak's face as he sees his own blood. The prodigy of the Peng clan, for the first time, staggers backward, gravely wounded. The battle has taken a decisive turn. Defeated, Peng Ak falls to his knees, acknowledging the power of the technique that defeated him. Could it be this? Yes. Yunseal walks away, reflecting on the dangerous gamble that gave her the victory. That was quite risky. To turn a fatal blow of the defensive technique into an attack, I had to endure all the strikes aimed at me, he reveals, admitting the mortal risk he took. Peng Ak watches him leave, amazed by his genius and apparent indifference. What? You're leaving just like that? Yunseal's reason for sparing his life is as cold as her gaze. You are someone unrelated to my revenge. Despite his defeat, A smile of respect forms on Peng Ak's face. Even among those who come after me, there are people like you. Interesting. With one last icy warning, Yunseal bids farewell. Let us never meet again. She tosses a hair ornament into the air, a symbolic gesture to leave the battle behind. Peng Ak watches him disappear into the distance, an encounter with a warrior of another caliber he will never forget. But the moment he is out of his enemy's sight, Yunseal's strength finally gives out, and she collapses from the pain of her wounds. Defeated and bleeding, Peng Ak lies on the ground, now at the mercy of a new and ominous figure. The figure reveals itself as one of the slaughtered demons, who asks the fallen warrior, "Did you come to kill a minor player like me?" The demon dismisses him with cold condescension. Peng Ak of the Peng family from Hebei. For an orthodox fighter, you were quite useful. A shame. With his last breath, Peng Ak laughs bitterly, realizing that he was always a pawn in a much larger game. Huh? What? You knew from the start. You underestimated the demon's sword, says the demon, a cryptic warning before delivering the final blow. Without a trace of emotion, the tournament Grim Reaper raises his sword and pronounces his sentence. Goodbye. With his task completed, the demon walks away from the scene, leaving behind another corpse in the bloody proving ground. But in the ensuing silence, a new figure appears, approaching stealthily. Suddenly, a hand grabs the wrist of a gravely wounded Yunseal, leaning against a tree, exhausted and bleeding. The victor of the previous duel now finds himself vulnerable before a new, unknown figure. Elsewhere on the island, the powerful Seo Jinha is wounded, exhausted, and leaning against a tree in a desperate situation. Before her, another contender gloats over her misfortune, savoring the imminent defeat of a renowned rival. Bad luck, Seo Jinha. Despite her condition, Jinha's gaze burns with untamable fury, refusing to give up. But her situation is worse than it seems, as revealed by the leader of the group that has cornered her. You were struck by the special Garami needle? Without the antidote, you would be dead anyway. Damn it, Jinha thinks, frustrated for having fallen into the trap of a squad that uses poison and organized tactics. In a final attempt, he switches his sword to his left hand, a move immediately noticed by his opponents. Are you trying to attack with the sword in your left hand? His enemy mocks his effort, knowing that a right-handed swordsman cannot fight effectively with the opposite hand. With victory assured, the leader gives the final order, her face lit by a cruel smile. Surrender. But unknown to anyone, a silent witness has been watching the entire scene from the shadows. Yunseal. The squad charges forward to deliver the final blow, unaware that the most dangerous man on the island is about to enter the equation. Despite her skill, Seo Jinha is overwhelmed by the squad's coordinated attack, which bombards her with throwing weapons. Amid the fray, another poison needle strikes her, and the poison begins to take effect. Her time is running out fast, as her desperate thought reveals. Damn, I got hit by a poison needle again. From the ground, she sees her enemies descending upon her for the finishing blow. With the poison paralyzing her and outnumbered, she closes her eyes, accepting her inevitable end. It's over anyway. But a cry of pain that is not hers startles her, and her eyes snap open. One of her attackers lies dead, and a new figure has appeared on the battlefield. Who is that? Someone ambushed. Like a ghost of death, Yunseal leaps from the shadows and throws herself into the heart of the enemy formation. The squad, which a second ago was tasting victory, now looks with absolute terror at the newcomer. And what they see is the face of a demon, its eyes shining with a white and empty light, filled with a pure and indifferent murderous intent. In an instant, the situation reverses, and Yunseal becomes a storm of steel, slaughtering the squad that cornered Seo Jinha. Leaning against a tree and weakened by the poison, she can only watch in amazement as a single man annihilates the entire group. The battle ends as quickly as it began, leaving a clearing full of corpses at the feet of the silent savior. Yunseal stands tall like an angel of death, the bloodied sword in hand, her face impassive. But Seo Jinha's expression changes to terror as she realizes that the massacre is not yet over. She tries to stop him as he approaches the last survivor. Wait, I don't want to hurt you, Dash. He completely ignores her and grabs the squad leader, his true target. And then, his real motive is revealed as he takes a vial from her. So this is the antidote. Now I can take care of the rest. Jinha continues trying to stop him, shouting wait, unable to do anything. With the antidote in his possession, Yunseal walks away from the scene, leaving a confused Seo Jinha wondering, what is happening? Desperate and racing against time, Seo Jinha reveals to Yunseal the severity of her condition. I have already been poisoned by them. Less than half a gak remains. But Yunseal's response is a cold splash of water, stripping away any hope of mercy. I came here to kill everyone, including you. She accepts the brutal logic of the trial. True. In the end, I'm just another rival you'll have to eliminate anyway. Still, in one last desperate attempt, she makes an offer. How about this? If you give me that antidote, I'll join your side. Yunseal looks at her, his expression unreadable and revealing none of his intentions. And why should I do that? He asks, his voice as cold as steel, demanding she prove her worth. She lays out the harsh tactical reality of the battlefield. There are only about 20 of us left. And except for us, everyone else has already grouped up. No matter how strong you are, you can't face them all alone, she argues. But if you cooperate with me, you'll gain an advantage. And with a sincerity born of desperation, she makes a vow. If you save my life, I swear I will never betray you. Yunseal evaluates her in silence, recalling her past actions and arriving at a conclusion about her character. She's proud, independent, but doesn't seem like someone who deceives or stabs you in the back. Yunseal considers her proposal, but not before making the terms of their agreement clear. Terms. With the little strength she has left, she establishes the pact. We fight side by side against the rest, until only you and I remain. He looks at her, weighing the sincerity of her oath and the tactical advantage of an ally with her knowledge. The tears of pain and despair in Jinha's eyes are the final proof that her offer is genuine. Having made his decision, he holds the antidote that will give her life. In an act of trust, he throws her the gourd, sealing their fragile alliance. She catches it, stammering in disbelief and relief. As she drinks the antidote, he turns his back to keep watch, the first act of their pact. But a sudden sound breaks the calm, and Yunseal's eye shines with alarm. Did another restricted zone just appear? We have to get out of here, she warns him, proving her senses are much keener than hers, who asks confused, why? Yunseal explains her terrible deduction to a still stunned Jinha. Most of the areas are already sealed, and if another has appeared again, and just as predicted, the other survivors begin to arrive, drawn to the new safe zone like moths to a flame. More and more contenders emerge from the trees, all elite warriors with their eyes fixed on their two new targets. The group keeps growing, and soon, a crowd of bloodthirsty fighters surrounds the pair. Finally, the trap closes, and Yunseal and Jinha stand back to back, surrounded by almost all the remaining survivors of the test. It means the survivors are likely heading this way. He concludes his thought, realizing his brilliance came too late. Among the crowd, the leaders of the various factions stand out, their faces calm and confident in their overwhelming numerical superiority. One in particular, a man with a cunning smile, draws everyone's attention. Yunseal's gaze immediately locks on him, recognizing a predator of an entirely different caliber. This guy feels different from the others. Tension breaks when an arrogant bully tries to start the massacre. Why not finish off these two right here? The shrewd leader of the enemy group analyzes his opponents, correctly identifying Vows, who has mastered the beast Tao of the Nanjia sect, and the other, Seo Jinha. He continues, while one of his henchmen warns of the leader's own skill and preparedness. His brilliant mind quickly deduces the situation. So the two have joined forces, a fact Yunseal mentally confirms, recognizing her rival's intellect. In a moment of silent understanding, the two allies prepare for the battle of their lives. As he ties the antidote to his arm, Jinha prepares to fight, even though the poison still runs through his veins. But the enemy leader notices the antidote and mocks her, a mistake that will cost him dearly. Enraged, Jinha unleashes her own secret weapon, a powerful powdered poison, shouting, Vows, I'll scatter Yanchwizen. That will give us a chance. The purple cloud spreads rapidly, sowing chaos and confusion among the enemies. Panic grips them as they recognize the infamous poison of the infernal blood sect. Yanchwizen. Damn it. Seizing the opportunity they have created, Yunseal and Jinha charge forward, beginning their counterattack amid the disoriented crowd. Within the purple cloud, the combatants realize that something is wrong. One of them cries the truth, his voice filled with panic and rage. This is not Yangchuisen. It's not poison, the leader realizes. You've tricked us. Catch him, quickly. But Jinha's smoke screen has already served its purpose. As they escape, Jinha explains her strategy to Yunseal. Open spaces put us at a disadvantage. We need to head toward the Rocky Mountains. We need to find the cave that works best for us, she tells him. But he is already one step ahead. I know one. She describes the perfect stronghold she chose at the start of the trial. A cave with a narrow entrance and a long passage inside. Jinha is amazed by his incredible foresight. Did he even have that planned? As if learning the beast Dao wasn't incredible enough. As they run, she looks at him with a new perspective, wondering who this mysterious and brilliant strategist really is. But the horde of enemies doesn't give up, and the chase continues through the forest. The duo runs for their lives, a desperate race toward the only refuge that might give them a chance to survive. After an exhausting chase, the duo finally reaches the Rocky Mountains, the sanctuary Yunseal had planned. We're here, Jinha says breathlessly, believing for a moment that they have found a respite. But their relief fades as a strange purple mist begins to envelop them. Has there always been a mist like this? She asks. Something feels wrong. And from the depths of the mist emerges the figure of a reaper, a massacre demon. Terror multiplies when they realize it's not just one, but several demons that have appeared. The terrible truth is revealed with crushing clarity. Is this area a restricted zone? Jinha shouts, while Yunseal adds, they must be watching us. Yunseal's mind connects the dots, realizing the cruel manipulation by the instructors. They deliberately marked this place as restricted once they saw us running here. While Jinha despairs, Yunseal finds a loophole in the rules. As long as we don't cross that boundary, the soul demons won't attack. With steely determination, he turns to face his pursuers, ready to use the trap to his advantage. If we have to fight anyway, doing it here isn't the worst. Yunseal analyzes their dire tactical situation. With the restricted zone at our backs, it's like fighting inside a cave with the exit block. Accepting that the only way out is through their enemies, Jinha draws his sword. So there's no choice. The two allies prepare for battle, ready to fight together until the end. The horde of contenders finally surrounds them, and one of them declares the end of the hunt. The escape ends here. Their faces are filled with arrogant confidence, certain that victory is assured by their overwhelming numerical superiority. But Yunseal and Jinha stand firm, back to back, a small bastion of defiance against the world. Behind them, the silent threat of the massacre demons reminds them that there is no retreat possible. One of the thugs, impatient for blood, mocks them, annoying pests. There's no point in dragging this out. With a war cry, he urges the rest into a final, coordinated attack. Let's finish them all in one blow. And the final battle begins, with dozens of elite warriors simultaneously attacking the two lone protagonists.